get us on, Chase? I mean, wave at me. Casey?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ready to go. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. It is 12:15. The City of Lamarque City Council, special meeting October 25th, 2021. Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Lamarque, Texas will conduct a special meeting on October 25th, 2021, beginning at 12 p.m. The council chambers located at 1109 B Bayou Road, Lamarque, Texas, as well as via video conference hosted through Zoom. In accordance with section 551.127B, the Texas Government Code, a quorum of the Lamarque City Council and the mayor intend to be at and will physically be present. 1109 B Bayou Road, Lamarque, Texas. This location will be open to the public. The meeting will be broadcast at this location and via YouTube. The council will meet for the purpose of considering the following agenda. The meeting has been called to order. Robin, would you give us a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember District A,
Present.
Councilmember District B,
Present.
Councilmember District C,
Present.
Councilmember District D,
Present.
and Ms. McCall, if you need to state your address.
4101 Main Street, Lamarque, Texas.
Thank you. Let's stand for an invocation and we'll ask Mayor Pro Tem to lead us in the pledge. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your presence in this place, and certainly we thank you for this great city that we all call home. For every member that's assembled here, we pray, Lord, that your love, your grace, your mercy, wisdom, compassion, and truth would come forth. Lord, we pray that you would bless all of us that are deliberating the next move for your city. Lord, we pray that we would keep all of our citizens at heart. Oh Lord, each and every one of them. Bless us today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good morning, afternoon, excuse me. What a fabulous afternoon to do the people's business. We're excited because I am a fanboy of one of our guests this morning. I love Ms. Johnson and certainly think that she's doing a great job. And so we'll get a chance to visit with her and pick her brain. Ms. Dominic, who is, I believe, her chief lieutenant, is here with us as well. Certainly, we would like to pick your brain today to see if we can get some clarity and a path forward. Before we do that, we have citizens participation, and it's limited to 3 minutes per person. Comments from the public will be heard at this time. Any person with city-related business who is signed up may speak to council on a specific agenda item, limited to 3 minutes. You should give the mayor your name and the item you wish to speak about. Compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the city may not deliberate on comments. Personal attacks will not be allowed, and personnel matters should be addressed to the city manager during normal business hours. Press *6 to mute or unmute your phone if you're participating by telephone. Press the unmute button if you're attending by Zoom or smartphone or tablet or computer. That would be the microphone icon, should be in the lower left-hand portion of your screen. And if you're in person, you may approach the podium to my left, to your right. Give us your name and the item, your name, address, and the item you wish to speak about. Kyle, are there any persons online wishing to speak at this time? Mr. Loftus. If you're wishing to speak, please, you're wishing to speak.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Are you wishing to speak?
No, I'm just watching.
Okay, thank you. I believe the rest of those persons are staff or contractors. Okay. We have one from our audience, a distinguished guest in his own right, former council member Robert Mishtich, District C, is wishing to speak. Mr. Mishtich, you may approach.
Mayor, council, thank you. Let me just say that these petitions were circulated in good faith and collected.
In fact, there were some 20 signatures that were collected on the night that you visited our HOA meeting. There were some missteps, I think, and some things that were said, and people started circulating that petition, not myself, one of my neighbors, while you were speaking. There is a great deal. This is the only method that we have for tax reduction. And when we raised this, when I was on council, it was at our previous city manager's request that it was extremely needed for these projects. It ended up that most of it went for raises and everything. But my vote then, as I made in a statement, was that we need to pursue reducing it the next year. Well, that never happened, and it just wasn't going to happen under that administration and well, with our past outgoing mayor. And that is the way this thing came down. I had previously asked this council just to reduce this 2 pennies, and it might avoid this. You know, it might could help lessen a petition. But this is our only method, and the public needs relief. And since y'all didn't do it, I'm sorry to say to you, but I'm in full support of this petition. I went to my neighborhood Saturday afternoon yesterday and grabbed up another 47 signatures just for the people on the street, and people are eager. I didn't do that in the onset because I didn't want it to be skewed from just my neighborhood. But the entire west end of town, there's people all over that were eager to sign this thing. We just didn't go to all of them. We can't, you know, well, we could, but it wasn't necessary. There was 331 signatures that were done. So what I'm asking is that this council not engage in any kind of voter suppression and allow this thing to go to election and let the public decide. And there's one more thing. Put your final budget online. You only have the proposed up there. Now, it's not going to be very different from the final budget. It hasn't been in the past. But still, you need to have that final budget up there. People is not going to believe what you're saying. You've got one little excerpt up there of one table of cuts, but that's not the only thing that can be cut. I can pick that thing to pieces, but put your final budget up there so that people can believe what you guys are saying. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mistrich, before you go, if you don't mind, I want to go back to a point of information. You and I were on council together, yes?
Yes.
We had not raised the tax rate at all during our time on council until Mr. Jackson, Tink Jackson,
Correct.
came and encouraged us, recommended, advised, pushed. Do you remember that?
Pushed, yes.
Pushed. In fact, when we had those tax hearings that year, Mr. Tink Jackson was the one that stood in this council chambers by himself to defend the tax increase, right or wrong.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we understand the only time that we raised the tax rate was at the behest, the encouragement from former city manager Tink Jackson, that he was the one that brought the issue of raising taxes to our city.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we were on the same page to that. Certainly, Mr. Mistrich, I can't question you on anything else, but we'll get into a discussion. I want you to know before we start and even after we finish, I have a lot of respect for you. And I believe that you are doing this because you believe it's what's right by your conscience. I don't think that there are any other motives involved. And I look forward to us continuing to discuss this to find the best path forward.
One other thing, Mayor, there may be some other statements out there about other issues. Those are not mine.
I know they're
I'm
not.
focused strictly on the tax relief.
I know they're not.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you. Yes, sir. Robin, are there any other? All right. Now we can get into the heart of the matter. Ms. Johnson, are you ready?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cheryl Johnson. She has been our longtime tax assessor collector, and she will attempt to parse this for us and help us to understand better what we all have been talking about.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, we'll let you give an opening statement and then we'll allow council to come back and question.
Thank you. And with permission of you, Mayor, I'm going to try and give a little bit of understanding the full scope of the tax code. My name is Cheryl Johnson. I'm the County Tax Assessor Collector. And you've met Ms. Dominic. She is the Chief Deputy of Property Tax and Support Services. Ms. Dominic has been with me for many, many years and just recently was promoted in that position. So please congratulate her.
Yes.
So there's been some confusion in the community about whether the adopted rate of the 55 cents is a tax increase. And I stand before you today to tell you it is absolutely a tax increase. It is not an increase in the tax rate, is an increase in the tax revenue. There's 4 phases in the tax calendar. An assessment is one of them. An assessment is where we receive the values from the CAD. And as everybody knows, the CAD values went up tremendously this year. So you're not the only one who's facing this huge potential cut in revenue based on the way that the law works. But the assessment phase is we receive the values, we calculate your rates, and we calculate no new revenue rate, voter approval rate, and so forth. And then we help you publish your notices in the paper. We take the rate that you adopt, we turn it into a tax roll and mail the statements. All of that is under the assessment phase. It's also called truth in taxation, which is embodied in the Texas Constitution, which says property owners have the right to give input into taxes when they affect them, into tax increases. So when their value increases, they have the right to protest the value, and the CAD has to tell them. And when the city governments or all the governments increase their tax rates, then you have the opportunity of public hearings. And the petition process that you're facing right now is just one of those ways that people have the opportunity to provide input. As many of you know, I believe that Senate Bill 2, and we tried to do a workshop on this, but COVID interfered with our ability to meet with all of our governing bodies, but we can always go back and do that again in the future if you'd like. Senate Bill 2 was the Texas Property Tax Reform and Transparency Act of 2019, and it accomplished several things. One was to reduce the rollback rate, which used to be automatic. It is now, used to be by petition only, is now automatic, was rolled back to 3.5% for most governments, not all. Whenever the rate that's adopted by local government exceeds the voter approval rate, it requires transparency, then that's under certain conditions, that's when the voters can petition for a rollback. SB 2 changed the names of the rate. The effective rate is now the no new revenue rate. The rollback rate is now the voter approval rate. And it added a couple of rates, which are very interesting and actually designed to assist small governments, particularly our cities. One is the unused increment rate. And what that is if you adopted a rate like last year, you adopted a rate below the voter approval rate. So we were able to give you basically, I call them a golden penny, an additional penny that you could raise the rate without any fear of ramification whatsoever from the public. It's for good behavior. It comes, essentially, that's what Senator Betancourt would tell you that it is. So when you meet those conditions over a 3-year period, we'll keep adding that up and adding it to your calculations. It also created the de minimis rate. And this was in the interest of small cities. If you're of a population less than 30,000, this is the rate that we calculate for your taxable value that will give you an additional $500,000. The Senate overwhelmingly believed, and the legislature in full when they passed this, that for those entities that are smaller jurisdictions, which you take a community, say like Jamaica Beach, and a penny only raises $16,000 or $17,000, there might be a need for them to have that additional $500,000, because as we all know, public works, drainage, all of these things cost a whole lot of money. So why is adopting the rate that you adopted in prior years a tax increase? By adopting this rate, you're generating more revenue. And in this instance, it's $1.1 million. Not counting your tax ceiling revenue and your $40 million in new improvement values, your values went up $163 million. I don't want to pass this out to you so we can talk about it if you don't mind. I mean, I can give you a comment. Would you like to see this? This is the public hearing notice. And as you can see by this, the public hearing notice, this notice was published 4 different times in the paper, and there were reasons for that. One of the things that Senate Bill 2 changed was the time span between your public hearings and the date you actually adopt. So one of those hearing notices had to be posted because you have a city charter, I think, that requires you to have more public hearings than actually the law requires.
Mhm.
Law requires one. So in the future, what we'll do in the interest of saving the city money is we'll wait until that last hearing, and you have an option there. You can have your public hearing the same day you adopt, and that way you can save substantial money. Sorry, Galveston Daily News, we're not as much interested in giving them revenue as we are about preserving yours. And so, we're always trying to come up with ways that we can save our entities money, and that would be one way in the future that we can. So as you can see from this public hearing notice, and I highlighted that first paragraph, the proposed tax rate is greater than the no new revenue rate, which means that the city of Lamarque is proposing to increase property taxes for the 2021 tax year. Now, based on what's happening in your community now, this is a notice that is typically between me, the Galveston Daily News, my staff, and your finance director. So I don't know that if this had been presented to each one of you in advance, and of course you could have seen it in the paper, in advance of adoption of this rate, if it would have changed your opinion at all on what you were considering. So it says further down in the next paragraph, if the city of Lamarque adopts the proposed tax rate, and this is in the middle of the paragraph, the qualified voters may petition the city to require an election to be held to determine whether to reduce the proposed tax rate. And if the majority of the voters reject the proposed tax rate, then the city of Lamarque will be resorting back to the voter approval rate, which is shown at the top of that notice. Now, and Senate Bill 2 also required us to make this as simple as possible for citizens. So we had to put that chart in the bottom, and this spells it out pretty much. And as you can see, you didn't increase your tax rate. That's 0%. Your average homestead value went up, your tax on the average homestead went up, and your total levy on all properties went up $1.1 million, or nearly 21%. And that is why we're where we are today. There's one other thing. Excuse me just a minute. This weather change has caused me to have to take antihistamines. Under a law that just passed in the last session with regards to the de minimis rate, you had the ability to, if you had adopted, we could have adjusted that no new revenue rate to 8%, which would allow you as a small city to be able to push that rate up to 0.49 without having any fear of a petition. And actually, Emergency Services District number 2, I believe, in Santa Fe did exactly that. They adopted that new rate that was allowed just this year. So, but they're not subject to a petition. So they increased their rate too. And I think that they probably adopted the same rate as they had in the past, but they stayed below that de minimis rate allowance, or that 8% allowance. And had you done that, it probably would have resulted in about $600,000 or $700,000 in revenue less than what you actually adopted. Let me see. One of the things that we tried to explain to the finance director and also to the mayor is that these numbers and these calculations are based on a couple of things that really are more touchy-feely than really hard science. One is we have the ARB approved numbers, and then we have those properties that were still under protest. And the chief appraiser directs us how much of that to use. Well, we don't know exactly how much they're going to lower those values. And so we never know going in what those final numbers are going to be, but he instructs us every year what to do. And this year he told us to use 20% of the under review. And I would assume that's because they went up so much and they knew they were making adjustments to people's values. And also, these calculations don't include the taxes of disabled persons and seniors. So we knew there was going to be additional revenues. We just weren't precisely sure what those were going to be. And that ended up where, although the revenue here, 2021 says 6.4 million, we ended up billing 6.9 billion for the city. So there will be more revenue than what we estimated it to be. Now, I don't know where this falls out in your budget or with your finance director, because that's on your side. All we're trying to do is get you through this process and help you make decisions that are going to be in the best interest of the city. When it's all said and done, at the end of the day, whatever rate you decide to adopt is your decision, not ours. We just try and do as much as we can to guide you in the direction that's going to prevent any dissension, any argument in the community. All of the communities right now, between COVID and drainage issues that we have in this county, there's so much going on that the last thing that we need is any more fights in the community. So we try to guide all of our jurisdictions to do what's in the best interest of them, but that's your decision. And then in your property owners, for your property owners as well. Now, my own city, and the mayor and I talked about this, adopted last year's rate. And I did what all of your citizens could have done. And I don't know if they did. I haven't gotten this information from the CAD. And I went online to that CAD database and I typed in a little note and it said, you're saying you're not increasing taxes, but you are by adopting last year's rate. Your revenue is going to go up. That is a tax increase. Didn't make a difference. They saw my comment and they went on down the road and our taxes went up. So, but there are opportunities for the public to have input. As you well know, Mr. Mitch Tick had given some input, public hearing. There's also the CAD database. So there's a variety of things that the citizens can do. Everything that we do is 100% required by law. And so when it's not 100% clear, like one of the things that I'm still going to reach out to my law firm, your law firm, and our software company about is you have your voter approval rate of 47.7, but are they going to let me roll it back to 47.9 if this rollback passes? Are they going to let me take advantage of that 8%? And that's something that this notice doesn't address. So that is something that we're still going to pursue and to validate that we're giving you the very best information, and whatever happens, we're prepared to do what is working best for the city. Are there any questions that any of you have? That was a lot of information.
A lot of information. We're going to open it up, but let me drill down on something you said just really quickly, and then we'll open it up. Casey, I'm coming to you first. So you live in Friendswood, and
Yes, I do.
this is public. You're a public official. We all know where you live. You live in Friendswood. Friendswood kept their rate the same.
Yes, they
the
did.
same way that Lamarque did. Yes,
Yes.
and that resulted in new tax revenue. Is
Yes, it
basically
did.
what is happening. So I said that again, and I'm not going to be long on this issue, but I'm trying to bring into context for all of those that are involved to start to see where the apples and the oranges differentiate. So even Friendswood did it. Apparently they had needs that I won't get into it because I don't live in Friendswood.
But their rate was less than the 3.5%.
But they still held it basically.
They held the
and
same rate.
And it was still a revenue
Right.
generation.
It was a revenue increase.
Right.
It was just less of a percentage than yours was.
Right. And we'll get into that shortly.
Your
Casey,
values increased more. That's to your city's credit.
our values, right, right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Casey, are you ready?
Ready to go?
Go ahead.
So I think one of the things that I am struggling with here is that I don't feel that I personally felt confused about what we were doing as a council. And I don't know if that's what some of the narrative is here. And I do think that it is a fundamental difference in the role of taxes in a community, right? I think there's different philosophies here because I mean, I agree. I should say, I don't agree with the premise that because revenues will increase overall, that semantically is the same as a tax increase. If we are keeping the percentage the same, but overall values are going up, you know, the appraisals have gone up and we will see a higher gathering of revenue, you know, that is a boon for this city. Especially at a time when we all know, and I don't need to go into this because we've gone into it ad nauseum, but at a time when we desperately need it, and there have been many demands from our citizens about what they want from the city, we did not institute a tax rate increase, but the nature of taxes, which are percentages, means that we will see greater revenue, correct? And so
May I make one comment here? So if you have, maybe your value didn't go up. For you, it's not a tax increase, but if your neighbor's value went up, for them, it is a tax increase. If the business down the street who has no protection under the law, like the homestead, a lot of your properties went up, but the property owners were protected by that 10% appraisal cap. Businesses aren't protected by that at all. So any If their values went up, anything you do, and you could have cut the tax rate 3 or 4 cents, but if their value went up an unlimited amount, then you would have still been increasing taxes on them. That's just the way the system works. I don't think it's particularly fair because you as a property owner aren't necessarily in control of it. And so, but that's a whole nother discussion, but go ahead, ma'am.
I mean, I don't have a whole lot more to say right now, Mayor Bell. I just feel that, I still feel confident that what we did was based on data in front of us and being faced with what our citizenry was asking of us and knowing intimately the very, very delicate and tricky nature of balancing a budget. And so I'm good right now. And I'm very appreciative of Ms. Johnson for being here.
And I appreciate you made a decision in the best interest of your community, because as a member of this governing body, that is your duty. That is absolutely your duty to do that. And that's the duty of everybody sitting on council. What our duty, and we're not conflicting at all, what our duty is to take whatever information we have, implement that law and give you the very best information that we can. But we also have a duty to those property owners out there to provide any information that they might have and answer any of their questions and assist them as much as possible. We're the ones that at the end of the day, I am you people when those appraisal notices go out, because people think we're the CAD, and we are you people whenever those bills go out in October. And I keep telling people that's not my name, but it doesn't seem to matter. But at the end of the day, and the process is good in that people get a bite at the apple in April. They can lower their value. They can try and lower their value. They're not always successful. That's why I teach classes. And they have the opportunity to present to council. And, during the budget process, they have the opportunity now on that online website to go online and voice their concerns. So Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and everything else aside, there are so many processes they could come to you at any one of your many meetings. So there is a process for them. This is the petition is the last process for them. What we find is people come into our office every day and they say, what happened? You increased my taxes. It's like, well, yeah. Did you protest your value? Well, no. Well, did you go to your governmental bodies, public meetings? Well, no. Well, did you go online to the database? Remember that little postcard that had my name on it, which I haven't figured out yet? What, did you go online and do that? Well, no. I don't know how to help them at that point other than to then tell them which payment option they have and what their different choices are under the law.
And that's the thing, Ms. Johnson, and we'll get into Mr. Carlson, but that's the thing. So certainly we've had 5 budget workshops, 5. We've never had more than 3. We've had 5 this year, budget workshops.
You had 3 people show up?
No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say that's kind of a record in those cities.
No, we had 2 faithful people that were members of the community, maybe 3 at times, that came with their notebooks and went along with us. None of those persons signed a petition because they were there. We had 5 budget workshops, 4 tax rate hearings where we had the rate in front of everybody to see.
Right.
We had 2 budget workshops for people, 2 budget hearings, for people to comment on the budget. Out of all of that, Ms. Johnson, that's 5 plus 2 is 7 plus, that's 11 times that people could have came to make comments while we were in the middle of creating this budget, right?
Yes, sir.
Only one person, to his credit, at the, I think it was the last tax rate hearing, came and said that he wanted to try to help to bring the rate down 2 to 3 cents. And so even Mr. Michtich was not advocating that the tax rate go to 47. 18,500 plus people, 18,500 plus people. Only one person came to talk about negotiating the rate down, and that was only 2 or 3 cents. And so it's hard for us to believe that there's such an uproar when we have given the public every opportunity to try to help us to understand what we need. We'll get into that, more about that in a minute.
What's interesting to add to that is we started sending bills to both property owners and mortgage companies a few years ago because but people were refinancing so much that they wouldn't get the bill. The bill wouldn't find, the wrong mortgage company would request the bill. They wouldn't find out, then they had penalty and interest on top of everything else. And for some reason, that bill would find them where they were in trouble. And so, and it wasn't trouble, but they'd find out the taxes weren't paid. And so this year, for the first time, in several years, we did not mail to the we did not mail to the property owners, except I think for one mortgage company that made an error. So in March is when all those other people are going to get a notice that the mortgage company got the bill and not them. That's when most people notice, because the mortgage company is going to write to them and say, you're going to have to start paying us $200, $300, $400 more a month because you have an escrow shortage. And so that's when we get those calls all over again.
Mhm.
And people are so busy. When this law was worked on, we tried to give the public every which way possible to get them to be able to have input into this process. So I don't disagree with you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Coles.
Afternoon. Thank you for all the hard work that you've done
Thank
to
you.
present here. It shows very evident. You did a lot of hard work, your staff also. I really don't have any questions for you, but I do thank you for all your work, and I thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate what y'all do too. Really do.
Ms. Yancey.
Yes, how you doing, Cheryl?
Fabulous. Thank you.
I do have some questions. You were saying that the workshops that we're giving to the city governments, when was that supposed to happen?
It was supposed to happen March last year, but COVID happened instead.
Okay, so no city governments got any type of workshops on this?
No, and I'd never done that before, but because
Okay.
Senate Bill 2 was such a profound change, and Galveston County was one of only 14 counties that had to implement it last year, not
Okay.
this year,
Right,
but the prior year. So we wanted all the elected bodies to have an idea. You're going to hear new terms. We're
right,
going to be doing things differently. This is what's going to be the outcome. So we wanted everybody to be well educated on it. Instead, all I could do because of COVID was write a lot of guest columns, publish different articles and stuff, and just try to communicate. Now, typically, and I don't know, I would like to have input from y'all. In April, when we get the preliminary tax rolls, I send that to the mayor and then typically to the next person in charge, to be the city manager, but I don't include all the council members. There's couldn't happen. It would just be a few more copies to print and mail, if that would be beneficial, because I go through and explain the process then as well.
right. Because that would be very
be helpful.
helpful. As a teacher,
that set up.
it's always good to see all angles
Yes,
and be able, because I hate taxes. And especially I hate new taxes.
I do too.
So, I mean, just that being an entrepreneur as well, you always want to make sure that you see everything.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we do have different needs here in Lamarck. We are not Friendswood. I was elected to bring in change and to provide safety. And there are a lot of things that we have to do. We flipped this budget upside down like a pancake, turned it around, tried to figure out the best way, what we needed to do for our citizens. But it's always good to look at everything from all different angles. So I would request that if something changes, that you please let the council members, all of us know, so that we can look at the big picture. Anytime that there is an opportunity to bring relief, we would definitely look at that. But I was just, my question really had to do with the workshops, because this is a teachable moment.
Mhm.
This is a teachable moment for us to, because I love teaching. I love the democratic process. Everybody knows that about Ms. Yancey. I love history, because this is where we can really talk about what we need. Lamarck has for years talked about what we didn't have.
Right.
Now we have the most educated council that we have ever had, making decisions, looking at everything. At the same time, if you keep doing the things the same way, nothing will change. And so we have pressing needs now. We are the #1 crime city in Galveston County, and we have been that for the last 15 years. And it's unfortunate, but there are some things that we have to change, and we have to change them now. We have an unprecedented history of violence happening in our streets right now. We have an opportunity to catch up. And so I'm concerned more so that we may be at a critical point in our history as a city for us to do something inspirational, to really bring changes. And how do we do that? That's why we're here today, to figure out how do we do that. And that, I mean, we didn't just have meetings, we had 10-hour budget meetings from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. begging people to come in and let us know what they wanted. And most people said safety. Most people said, please reduce crime, help our streets. So I say to all of our residents, this is a crucial time to do something different. And so I thank you for your, now you did say you worked on the law on this particular
Yes, I worked
Senate.
on Senate Bill 2. Yes,
So you personally
yes,
worked in Austin
yes.
on Senate Bill
I was
2.
asked by the committee to come and give expert testimony on a lot of things.
Okay,
And one of those was elections. When's the right time to have an election?
okay,
And so when a government knows it's going to exceed the voter approval rate,
right,
if you know that early on, then we were asking everybody to adopt that rate by August 17th. So that election could have been held in November, because that's when people vote.
right, right.
That is really when people vote. So that
Mhm.
was, so as the voter
Mhm.
registrar, having those statistics, that was also part of the input that I gave. I would like to invite you to, and I
Mhm.
don't disagree with anything you said, and violence is a problem across this nation right now. It is an American problem, not just a Galveston County problem. So it's going to have to be addressed. And I hope that at some point in time, people can learn to deliberate rather than shoot guns. But that's, I've got my gun and I'm going to use it if I have to. So, but two, I do invite y'all, if you look in your tax statement, then you'll see we communicate, we use that as a form of communication. I teach classes on how to effectively protest your property value. That's not tricks and that's not a shell game. What that is explain to people what the process is. And I go through everything I just went through with you. I go through on the CAD side and what they're doing, because I worked there as a director of information many years ago,
Mhm.
and people need information. At the end of the day, they need to understand what's going on. Now, I've taught that class probably 125 times, and I can't believe there's still people in this county that haven't attended it, because I would have thought by now, as many times as I taught it, that everybody would have come, and still people call me you people, so they
Yeah.
obviously haven't entered the class. So, but that is also a good opportunity, and I'll make sure to share that information with y'all as well.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor
That's
Pro
all I
Tem.
have right now.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks. Number one, the right of initiative is something that I hold very dear. I utilize that when to bring about zoning here in this city. In fact, we had to go and distribute a petition twice in order to effectuate that. If we did not have zoning, we would not have planned development now for the city of Marque. We would not have commercial areas and to protect the value of your neighborhood. So I value that. That's something that is important. The city of Marque, unlike other local municipalities, has also incorporated that within its charter and preserving that right of initiative, right of recall. All of these rights are important. This happens to be something on Senate Bill 2, part of the law there, and I'm supportive. It is what it is. It is the law. I took an oath to protect the law, and the fact that I think we're going to be taking action to, if it's so warranted, certify the signature. Is that accurate there or not?
No, I think today we're
Is this
going
just
to
a
be,
discussion?
today we're
Discussion.
Okay,
going to acknowledge that there is a petition.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, at some point that will happen then, and then I'll look forward to that, and then we move on. To be clear, that election would be in May,
Yes, sir.
not November. Would be in May of next year. So I look forward to a healthy discussion with our residents to very clearly set forth the fact that, as you said, I'm using your exact word, this is not an exact science. The development of these figures, because, and I want to make my point, the initial worksheet that your office presented to us indicated a no new tax revenue rate of 26 cents.
Yes, sir.
26 cents. And that was not ultimately the one that we utilized here.
Right. That's why we work so closely with your
So-
finance
right.
directors.
So-
Yes.
So that was what is, and I said at that meeting,
Right.
that's incorrect. I said that's not proper
Yes,
at
you
that,
do.
at that time.
And that's
So-
based on the information that we're provided, or information in these laws are changing constantly.
Right.
So we rely heavily, we're partners with your finance directors, your finance officers,
Exactly.
to determine that everything's exactly right. So when we sent that to her, it's like, look at this, what's wrong? And we went back and forth several
And
different
so,
times on that.
I want that to be clear. It's not an exact science. Going back to the discussions that we had on our budget, first, person who testified at my request was our tax collecting law firm, Mark Chevalier, who came in here.
Mhm.
And Mark's an old friend as well, too. And he gave the background, the history, once again, speaking as to the manner in which taxes are collected. They don't come in all at once. There's a range that occurs on a monthly basis. Cities have to adjust for this. So once again, I'm going to enjoy very much presenting to the citizens of this, the voters of this community, just numbers and facts associated with this particular process. The other item, by the way, Robert, you mentioned putting the budget. I agree with you. It should go on our website, but League City hasn't even put up theirs final actual budget. It's a process, as we've all learned, and you during your time here in city service, is that we as city council persons can ask something to be done, and it has not been done. It takes a process, especially with the number of members that we have here on staff. So I know the council has asked that to be posted online, and as well as all other information. One other point I was going to mention. Well, once again, I'm going to look forward to between now and May to have a healthy discussion with regard to this. It's part of our system, and I look forward to getting on with the next part of this process, Mayor.
Very good. Ms. Johnson, I'm going to ask you a few questions. See if we can get through them. Just very quickly, what is your role as tax assessor? How would you define your role?
Jackie of all trades. I work very closely with the team. We do not just assess and collect taxes. I'm also the voter registrar. I oversee 4 full-time offices and 2 satellite offices, and have now county commissioners gave us additional personnel, and we have 54 counting me full-time employees in those various offices. We are getting ready to, and I'm sure y'all are considering it, do redistricting. So while we're in the middle of doing taxes, I'm going to have a whole nother group of people, some of who are going to be coming in part-time, and working on changing districts so that we can gear up to be ready for a primary election in March. And we're also sending out voter cards. So we've got a lot going on in our offices, but as far as taxes go, we collect Texas Parks and Wildlife, boat licensing, as well as do the voter registration, clean operated machines. And we can actually help the city if you have those types of permits. We can provide those services to you. Our whole goal is to be a partner with our governments to help them reduce the cost, because consolidation of services saves money. And y'all been a partner for a long time with us.
So you are the person that assesses tax and collects tax.
Yes, sir.
So that's very straightforward. I assess taxes and then I would collect them.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And so let me pick your brain a little bit. So when you were campaigning, your sign, you remember your sign?
Oh, yeah.
Loved
little
your
scissors.
sign.
Love my
Your
scissors.
sign had scissors on it.
Yes, sir.
And so what did the scissors mean?
The scissors represent who I am and what I believe. And what I believe is I believe government should live within its means, just like we have to live within our means as citizens. And I support cutting taxes. That's just what I believe. When I ran for school board 26 years ago in Clear Creek, I ran on the platform to adopt a homestead exemption because we had lost our homestead exemption because of PVTO, because this very law that is creating the problems where you are today. And so basically, like I said, it's my little scissors is who I am and what I believe. And I believe in lower taxes.
And I appreciate you and I respect you for that.
Yes.
But let's make the distinction. Who you are as a person who believes in living within your means, according to your statement.
Yes, sir.
Is very different than who you are as a tax assessor collector.
Not really.
Not
Because
really.
one of the things that we do in our office has been a goal of my office is when I ran, it was to increase service, reduce costs, and fight for property tax relief, which I've done all 3. We've managed in our office to probably get 20 laws changed since I've been in office.
there's a rollback rate. There's a chance for a petition. Let's seize this chance for a petition. That's not what this is about. This is about adequately providing for our citizens at all costs. And I know that you see that. And so I'm trying to make sure that everybody sees that Cheryl Johnson sees that this is an issue as well. Let me ask you something else. We talked a little bit. Let's try to resolve a couple things. It's clear that this council did not raise the tax rate. We did not raise the tax rate. Now, the other part of this issue is that because valuations increased, tax revenue was increased.
Yes, sir.
Right? And so we didn't raise the rate, but revenue was increased. Now, before Senate Bill 2, there was such a thing called the effective tax rate, right?
Which is now the no new revenue.
And so this thing, and Mr. Mishich has been on council before, and I'm just saying that because he's familiar with the term as well. So for years, cities in our county have had tax rates hold steady, even when the effective tax rate has dropped below the rate that they had and that they were holding steady. That has happened years. That's one of the ways that cities are able to realize new revenues so that they can make sure that they're providing adequate services. And so I just wanted to make sure that we are all understanding that point. The point is these types of things happen in municipal government over the years, and every municipal government has a decision every year to make whether they want to raise taxes, whether they want to hold the tax rate steady, or whether they want to go to an effective tax rate if it's lower than the rate that they passed previous. And so that's a part of what we do as municipalities every year.
Right. And part of that equation is what the legislature determined because of increasing values. This state is wildly popular. So what they were trying to accomplish with Senate Bill 2, and they accomplished it with PVTO, but PVTO had to have the 8%, is that when those values go up, the revenue isn't supposed to automatically go up. The government's supposed to live within their means and say, do we need all of this? You did make the decision that you needed all of that. But the property owners having the right to the petition, having the right to speak, having the right to control their taxes. This petition, other than running for your seats, the only right the citizens of this community have, rights, not talking about them they could have come to speak to you, they could have protested their value, is this petition, is their right to vote, cast a vote at the poll. And when Senate Bill 2 was passed, what the legislature was trying to get away from was government saying, and Texas City used to be famous for this. Matt Doyle and I would argue for hours on, well, we didn't increase the tax rate. For years, they didn't increase the tax rate, but they were increasing taxes. They were in a rollback position several years ago. So what Texas City did when the citizens petitioned for their rollback is the council went out, the city went out and convinced the citizens that their needs outweighed the increase in taxes. And that's really your responsibility now if this petition is accepted. And I don't know where we are on that. But the legislature wanted people to have that right. And they also wanted a check for government. That's why they went to that 3.5%. But recognizing, because we had 24 hours of testimony in Senate Bill 2, one of the years that it failed, and that 24 hours of testimony were small governments coming forward and saying, we can't live with this 2%. We can't live with this 3%. And the development of the unused increment and the development of the de minimis rate to try and give you other options that would give you some wiggle room without adversely impacting your property owners. Because one thing that we have to remember in all of this, and one other point, when you're looking at this revenue, and I'm sure you are, and I have not looked at your budget, you don't have just property taxes. Dickinson doesn't have just property taxes. They also have sales tax. They have fees. So it's more than that. So you're getting ready to have Amazon. It's unfortunate that we want Amazon actually to put a little retail center out here.
Right.
You should be encouraging them to do that, because if they do that, you'll collect the sales tax here on the mark, right? Mm-hmm. So it's retail. You need that sales tax revenue in addition to that property tax revenue. You should have maybe a 5-point of revenue. And so not knowing what Dickinson's retail's like, what their sales tax is like, although we have to calculate all those numbers, I rarely go back and compare them. I do have charts that I've done for years because everybody says we're not increasing taxes. So for years, I take our levy report and I make a chart. And without exception, every single, except maybe Jamaica Beach until this year, without exception, every single government's revenue is doing this, even when the rate's doing that. And it's because of increased value. So it's closing that gap, which is why Senate Bill 2 passed and we're, at the
Yeah.
3.5%.
So a couple more things, and then I'll share something with those that are listening. So seniors in our city have freezes,
Yes, sir.
and they don't have to pay their taxes.
No, they don't.
And so as we
We should not
think
have
about
said that probably.
well, so Ms. Johnson, I have been forthright in this whole ordeal. I have explained this to a T, as we'll find out. I don't know if you've heard my explanation of it when I was telling the citizens, but I know for a fact Ms. Dominic heard what I actually said to the citizens, and I hope that she'll have a chance to be able to say what she heard and what she thought about what she heard. But I think that we need to understand a couple things. Seniors don't have to pay their taxes. And so that is a potential revenue fall. Seniors have in this city, their taxes are frozen. So many of those folks that have signed a petition that are over the age of 65, their taxes are frozen already anyway. And they don't have to pay those that they're assessed.
Mhm.
And so we have to, as a city, we have to calculate that in what we do. We can't say, oh, we have this amount of revenue coming from this group of people when this group of people aren't obligated to pay their taxes because of their status, senior or disabled.
Right.
And this group of people have their taxes frozen anyway, period, right? So we don't have to,
That might be why it comes out of the calculations.
yeah.
It's just never addressed. And Friendswood and League City ended up adding it as an extra line on their public hearing notice because it looked like they were adopting a deficit budget when they weren't. But you're absolutely right. The county, I think, is counting 50% of that revenue from the tax ceilings because they don't know with certainty who's going to pay.
Right. And so the other thing really quickly, because we're trying to move through this. The other thing is this. I have the truth and taxation forms from Friendswood. Alvin, did y'all know that Alvin has a 76 cents tax rate? Alvin does, 76 cents. The city of Galveston, the city of Lamarck, the city of Texas City, who you just said to us, Matt Doyle, in all of his glory, love Matt Doyle, for years,
Me too.
kept the tax rate the same and increased revenues. Again, this is not foreign. This is not foreign what's happening here. We want sometimes some of us want this to be foreign for various reasons that we'll find out in the future. But this is not foreign what we're doing here. This is something that every government does and every municipality has to do. Santa Fe, and what I wanted to say to you, and you and I visited about this, is every other taxing entity in these documents, their rollback rate was 1, 2, or no more than 3 cents. And so they were going back from 53 to 51. And that's a much easier jump. We were tasked with or asked to go back from 55 cents originally to 26 cents, and it landed on 47 cents.
Right.
Those are 8 cents. Every other city that's getting a pat on the back for rolling back to the no new revenue rate, they only, and I'm applauding them, but they only roll back 2 cents, Ms. Johnson, 3 cents,
Because their values didn't increase. as
which is
much.
very different, a very different ask than to roll back a $13 million budget
Right.
to roll back 8 cents. Now, let me get out of your hair. Let me just say this. I'm gonna just say this, and I'm gonna go and open it up to Ms. Dominic and Ms. Koo, and then Chief Oregon, and then we'll move to our next meeting. Let me say this. I am a property owner. I pay taxes on my home in this city, and I pay taxes on my business in this city. I pay property tax. I pay personal business tax, right? And so I am affected just as much as every citizen. Here's a fact. Casey pays taxes. Michael pays taxes. Kim pays taxes. And Joe pays taxes. Everybody on this dais are tax-paying members of this community. And I think that we need to understand that. Here's the issue. after 4 listening tours, 3 neighborhood watch meetings, an entire campaign, 3 safe city initiatives, the number one thing overwhelmingly that everybody in our city said that they wanted to achieve was not a tax break. It was safety. Just the other day, Ms. Johnson, just the other day, people might not know this, but I'm telling it all. Just the other day, Texas First Bank was robbed. That was last week. And so crime continues to persist in our community. The community said to us, we want to feel safe. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So when we had a Safe City meeting in February, the very first thing that I said was, I believe and I want and I know the city of Lamar can be the safest city in Texas. And maybe folks thought that I was playing when I said that, but I was not kidding. When we had our Texas City Lamarck Chamber of Commerce State of the City address, I said Lamarck will be the safest city in the state, actually. And I meant that with every fiber of my being. I meant that Lamarck will be the safest city in the state of Texas. The new revenues that were generated by us keeping the tax rate the same, it's clear. More than I would say 80% of those revenues were geared toward public safety. Before we had a conversation with you, before we had a conversation with Mr. Mitchich, before we had a conversation with anybody about taxes at all, the first thing we dealt with, and you can ask these folks over here, the first thing we dealt with in our budget workshop was keeping our city safe. These new revenues are bringing us 2 street crime police officers, a new detective to solve crimes. We have over 300 felonies unsolved in our police department, 27 unsolved murders in our police department. These new revenues are bringing a new detective. These new revenues are bringing a new narcotics officer to our community. These new revenues are helping to make an impact on the mental health of the police officers that serve our city. These new revenues are bringing new police cars. These new revenues are bringing a new deputy chief to help bring direction to our police department. And so the majority, the overwhelming majority, not before or after we talk to you, but during the budget process, the overwhelming majority of the decisions that we made with this excess revenue, even though we didn't know it was excess because you hadn't talked to us yet, was all planned and purposed for the police department. This city will be the safest city in the state of Texas. That's the promise I made to the people. I won with 90% of the vote because people want to feel safe. And I will stand on that every day and all day. Because, one more thing, in 1964, the Republican National Convention, Ronald Reagan said that it's a time of choosing. And that led to him being elected twice as our president. And so this is a time of choosing. Either we want to be safe, and either we want to have the protection we need, or we don't. And so I stand by the blue. I stand with the blue. I back the blue 100%. And I will do everything in my power, including introducing to this community the idea that I've had for years of a new police station, because our city needs to be safe.
And you're going to need to go out for bonds for that, unless you do it like Matt Doyle likes to do, which is pay it out of M&O. And that's why he had to exceed the voter approval rate so many times. So I would just encourage you to do this as you move forward with the decisions you make. As the testimony that Senator Betancourt, Chairman Betancourt gave time and time again, is the last thing then, should the property owners voice an opinion and say no to this tax increase, you need to dig deep and not take away from public safety. You're going to have potentially tough decisions. And so you need to be prepared to know, what is it, if you have to live without something, don't give up on your law enforcement, because that is critical. And, and it's funny, it depends on where you go. In Friendswood, people say their biggest concern is taxes. In League City, people say their concern is taxes. Of course, Friendswood also complain because they didn't have a Chick-fil-A, but that's either here or there. So everybody in Galveston, it's drainage. Every time it rains, we can't get out of the parking lot. So everybody has a different need, but your law enforcement is so critical. Just never lose focus of that if faced with difficult decisions in the future.
And the issue, Ms. Johnson, is this: we just established that we have a $13 million budget. There is no money. People think that we have overwhelming amounts of money hitting here and hitting there. We have a $13 million budget. Dickinson has a 20. There is no money. Everything that we put into this budget was put on new revenues, and it was targeted toward the police because the citizens said they wanted to feel safe. And if we have to roll back 70%, Ms. Johnson, 70% of our budget is salary. 60% of our budget is public safety. There is no way around the police department being hurt by this. No way. If people can tell you everything that they want to tell you, at the end of the day, you can't get anything from 13 million. You can't. At the end of the day, the new revenues that were generated were all designed to make us safer. And so if we roll back from those new revenues, it's going to hurt the police department. And if we all back the police department like we say we do, and we know that, we can look at the budget and we know that, then what is this really about?
Just be cautious not to criticize those who can't afford to pay taxes and do support this rollback. Be cautious in criticizing them because they too have a need. And public safety is important to all of us, but to tell them that their needs aren't equally important. We have a lot of people without work. I have an employee live in a car right now. There are people who have needs, and you need to consider those needs as well. So just be cautious on that.
We will, and we'll have a discussion, but we want to make sure that people are aware of the discussion and the truth of it. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for your time. Ms. Dominic, did you have some things that you want to share? Huh?
The only thing that I would like to tell you all is that the petition process is just guaranteed by the Texas Constitution. Don't take it personal. Allow your citizens to have their say. But at the same time, you did everything that you can to explain to them what they're giving up, or what they would have to give up by not taking this increase. Just go for it.
When I saw you in the back before we came out, you said to me that you felt that myself and this council explained the process to a T.
I did. I watched a couple of your onlines and I felt that you explained everything to them as far as what happened. The reason that your tax bill increase is due to valuation because you didn't increase the rate, but yes, it increases your revenues. That's the law. That's the stated facts. There's nothing that we can do to change that. However, in that process, the petition is still the citizens' rights to be able to do that. And so, again, explain your process to them, explain your budget to them as you have did before. I would encourage the citizens to look at their tax rate. You're looking at a 6 cents difference in your rate. Look at it per 100 and see what it actually means to you. Is this to your safety? Figure it out. If you need help with us, call the tax office and we can help you get some of those numbers and get a little better outlook for each individual person to see what it's like. But this is just a process. It's the law. And so we'll go through it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Dominic. Ms. Koo, would you like to say something to this body?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, please.
I couldn't get the camera on. I'm sorry. I do apologize.
Okay.
But Mayor, I couldn't have said it better myself, what you just said. We did plenty of meetings, workshops, whatever, and we share with everyone. The citizens voice their needs, their concerns. All these years, nothing got done, so forth. Okay, so now we finally put all of that plan in place. They mentioned no action. We don't see a plan. We want to see a plan. We put the plan together. We put action together. Everything costs money. All we can do is listen to them, follow their guidance. We put the budget together, putting the plans together to make it happen at this rate. And now you have another group wanting petition. I think we've done everything we can do at this point, and just follow the laws and follow, the majority of the citizens' voices to guide us to the right direction. If we have to change direction, we will. But at least we're showing transparency. We're showing the citizens that, hey, we follow whatever guidance that you guys direct us towards. It is what it is. There's nothing magical about the numbers, nothing hidden. We will continue going that path and see how the voters feel during an election. It is what it is. So this group of council, finally, you want things done. And that has been a concern in the past. So we want to put actions in place, but we cannot do it alone without the citizens' help. And thank you for mentioning the part that for seniors, the freeze, it does not impact them with the increase. I'm sure a lot of them feel that it does. So I'm glad, Mayor, you brought that up to make that clear and transparent to the citizens. We'll see how that comes out. And thank you, council, and all the staff who worked so hard during the budget process to make it work, and we'll continue to work hard moving forward, no matter what.
Very good. Thank you, Susie.
Yes, sir.
As Chief Randall Argon approaches to talk to us about an impact this would have on the police department. Again, the question we're going to have to ask all of ourselves at some point: how much would you give to feel safe? That's really what this is about. How much are you willing to give to feel safe? And what then would happen if crime comes to your doorstep, or to your neighborhood, or to your street? What if your home was broken into, or your vehicles were vandalized? How would you feel? Would it be worth it? And so that's the debate that we're going to have. And certainly that's going to be a spectacular debate. And we look forward to it. Chief, would you approach, please, from a perspective of your ability to provide services?
Thank you, Mayor. When it comes to budgeting for the police department, you either pay now or you pay later. Crime is in the upper, going up. I'm going to show it at the Safe City Initiative in just a few minutes. And, every city I've been at, which has been 7 or 8, this same issue has come up. Mayor and I have talked about it. Chase and I have talked about it. You keep, like infrastructure, if you don't fix your streets or your water lines, everybody doesn't want to pay taxes. 50 years later, you're in trouble. Same thing with the PD, police department, law enforcement. You've got to fund the police department. And I've had some cities where they didn't want to give us vehicles, and they were hot seating, which means 24/7, that vehicle's running 24/7. 3 guys, 3 women drive that thing all day long. They last about 1.5 years, 2 years. And I had one city, and I'll just be quick about it. The city had about 70,000 population. Same thing, we were trying to get vehicles. I try to talk about the lease purchase, which I did before I left in 2014. Well, the mayor was a full-time mayor, a paid mayor, no city manager. And at 2 a.m, got a call from one of my officers, the watch commander. He said, Chief, a car was turning a corner, one of the patrol cars, and the wheel came off. I said, how fast was he going? He was going 8 miles an hour. And the car was like 1.5 years old. You drive it 100,000 miles, and we don't drive the speed limit. We can't. We'll get in trouble if we do. So I talked to the mayor, and that's what got us the cars that we needed. You're going to pay now, or you're going to pay later. Crime's going to go up. Any questions? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Let's, guys, we're at 1:30. Go ahead, Joe.
Just Ms. Johnson's deputy there, just to be clear, the proposed rate reduction, if the election were held, when the election's held in May, and if were to pass, it's not 6 cents, it's 8 cents, 55 versus the 47. Okay,
cents, yeah.
With the possibility of the numbers adjustments that Ms. Johnson, but at this point, it's 8 cents. Number 2, Ms. Johnson, just to be clear, the notice of public hearing on tax increase is the standardized form that all jurisdictions utilize for purposes of all their postings, correct?
That's one of the notices. The county's notice was notice of a meeting to adopt because they adopted below the no new revenue rate.
The no new.
So that, yeah, there's like 5 or 6 different public notices.
Yes, and all the ones that I saw from the municipalities, as the mayor said, all had the heading. Even they may have dropped it, but it still indicated there was.
It all
an
depended on the
increase.
note, on the proposed rate. And some of them proposed the voter approval rate so they can drop back below that. But some of them will, because they don't know what their needs are until they're going in. Yes.
And thank you. And then 2 other quick items, Mayor and Council, my fellow councilors. The possibility of this, and I always look at possibilities. What's always the plan B, as you guys have heard me say, is that in my world right now, when and if this petition is certified, we need to operate as if this is already passed. So we're going to have to take a look at my world of already operating for the next year with the reductions. We're going to have to go back and take a look at items that we've committed at in our budget that also impact police and fire. And but more importantly, Mayor, I have to say this, and all these have been publicized, by the way, they've been online. The fire negotiations, the police collective bargaining agreements, the fire department, and those of you who saw that, and I don't think we have a public notice on that, but the ultimate result there is that they are deferring the renegotiation for 1 year. Is that accurate?
That's correct, with the 2%.
With the 2% cost of living increase that we provided across the board. Now, with regard to the police collective bargaining negotiations, Mr. Mayor, in my world, I think those need to be suspended as a result of this possibility. And if necessary, those we've made a good faith effort, and we need to go ahead and initiate and notify the union of that, and if necessary, proceed with an arbitrator making a decision consistent with the terms of the collective bargaining agreement. That's what I would be doing. And the last thing is, and I said this previously, I for one have said we do need to reduce in terms of numbers. How do we do that? Marque historically has not had planning. It has no financial planning. It has no comprehensive plan. It has no drainage plan. And so this, in my world, is a possibility to do that. It permits us not just to work on this, but to work on a financial plan for the next year as well, too, which will incorporate reductions. How do we reduce our taxes? 8 cents of our taxes go to pay our debt. 8 cents. So how do you reduce? Well, off the top, logically, is let's reduce and pay off some of our debt. If we can pay off some of our debt, we can reduce that amount. And then the other way is let's increase our sales tax. Let's remember to buy in Marque. Let's remember to support our businesses here, because other cities that like League City, like Webster, that have reduced their property tax burden have done so because of the increase in the sales tax collections. And that's a goal that we all have. So, so we need to be a business-friendly community in our zoning, in our efforts to attract, in our customer service. We still need to do a bit more, and our residents will testify to this in terms of our customer service attitudes.
But nobody's coming to do business if they're going to be robbed.
And this is true. This is true.
I mean,
This is a process, right?
Right. It's a
So-
process.
so-
Nobody's going to come
and
have business.
And so, once again, it speaks to, in my world, the financial planning.
One of the
in the
things that
long
we
term.
can do that might help you moving forward, and we've worked with Hitchcock and a couple of the other communities on this, and it started when I worked at the CAD, is I'm sure that if you have an economic development division, you might already have this. We can get the CAD to code a map of the city of Lamarck and all the types of properties that are there. So whether they're residential, whether they're commercial, whether they're vacant lots, so that you can see really what you're looking at. And they also are out doing drive outs right now. And we know Amazon's going to come on the roll in full. The chief appraiser can possibly tell you what that's going to look like. So moving forward, we won't know until April what your preliminary property values are going to be for 2022, but they might be substantial enough, especially adding that Amazon and any other things that might come on board. New homes, you have a lot of rooftops. So those types of things, the CAD might can help generate maps and information that would help you with some of that as well.
Which is one of the things that we said was next year is a better year.
Yes.
For this discussion, not this year. The reaction for this year is premature. As you can tell, Mayor Pro Tem has already said he recommends that we suspend. Now there's going to take 3 votes, but he recommends that we suspend negotiations with the police department because they're asking for more revenue, more compensation. And so whether we want to, we can put our heads in the sand all day long. At the end of the day, this action is going to hurt our police department. At the end of the day, we can say it won't to make us feel better, but it will. Let me say this, and then we'll move to this discussion of a petition really quickly. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I respect 100% the citizens' right to petition their government. In fact, I'm the one that said, before anybody else said, citizens, there's a rollback rate, you have a right to petition. Before it was in the streets, before people had picked this up as a mantra, the mayor said that to the community. And I'm going to continue to say, you have a right to petition your government. That's not what this is about. I respect their right. I suspect, though, that every citizen is going to need to hear a forum, a debate from both sides, right? And so if this petition is accepted and an election is set, what I'm going to do every month, Ms. Johnson, every month, I'm going to sit right down here and I'm going to have a forum on taxes. And I'm going to invite every leader of this petition drive to sit and have a discussion, just me and them. We're not going to have any phones. We're not going to have any notes. It's just me and them. And everybody who wants to come and see can see, and everybody who wants to tune in can tune in. Let's talk about taxes, right? Because the citizens need the real story. And so I will, as the mayor, sit, whoever it may be, and have a debate, a discussion, a forum about taxes. Because we can't continue to do these things online. We can't continue to do these things online when we have a forum here, City Hall. Let's solve our problems in City Hall. Let's not do it over a post or a text or a tweet, because so much gets lost in the translation. Let's do it person, 2 people sitting at a table talking about taxes, right? And let the citizens hear, because people are in the middle. They don't know what to believe, right? And so we need to make sure that they have all of the information and make sure they have it accurately in a meaningful discussion between 2 people. And I'll do that every month. Let me tell you something else I'm going to do. I'm going to get with Chief Argon and we're going to have tours of our police station every month. Chief, can we do that? We'll have tours of our police station every month and we'll see, and we'll see the toilets that are broken. We'll see the gun closets that are inoperable. We'll see how they've been put together with no lockers and all of that. And then folks might say, well, why didn't y'all do anything about it sooner? I had been screaming at the top of my lungs about a new police station for quite some time.
And
so go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm going to invite all of you to spend a day in my office on my front line to see what it's like December 31st and January 31st when people are coming in and can't afford to pay their taxes and are begging for help. I've invited county commissioners, I've invited a lot of elected officials in, because that's where the rubber meets the road. And when people are standing before you and saying, it's either my medicine or pay you. It's either my medicine or pay you. I'm going to tell them every single time you go get your medicine, we'll figure out how to get your taxes paid. But when you see that perspective, you see a whole different
You do.
perspective.
You do. Thank you. Thank you for that.
So I think what we're talking about is a process. What comes first? It just hurts my heart to hear about suspending negotiations for giving our cops raises. That just hurts because we know we have a problem. We have an opportunity to fix it. We need to do it. So the question becomes, when, Mayor, do we do it now? You've already said, Ms. Johnson, that when we did our budget, we did not know the sales tax for Amazon. We're not sure. That's still juicy, flexible. Maybe next year we'll have a better number of what we're going to have to pay. And I guess what was concerning to me in this whole thing is that we were elected for change. We were elected to bring something different to the city of Marque. And what do we attack first? Do we attack safety? Do we attack, as a business owner, people bring their businesses to two areas where, one, they can make money, and two, where they're safe. And so do we need more businesses in Marque? Yes, we do. We're not Lake City. We're not Friendswood when it comes to retail. And there are only two ways that governments are funded. That's property taxes and sales taxes. And since Carbide has left Marque, we have never had that strong sales tax property base since they have left. We have been rebuilding ever since we lost an entity that large. We have to be able to attract more businesses similar to that, which will grant some relief. But what do we do in the meantime until we can attract that entity? It's property taxes and sales tax. Grants, and I've talked about trying to apply for grants. We've got to do that as well to try to offset some of those things. But the issue, and I guess is what we'll go through the next 9 months, is what do we attack first if we want true change? So I just want people to understand that there's only two ways that cities are funded: sales tax and property taxes. It doesn't just fall out from the sky. So what do we attack first? But I welcome this teachable moment.
Absolutely. Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
If I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just housekeeping matter and direction for staff. We received the petition. Under the tax code, the city council is the judge of the petition and its validity. Given the short timeframes, Robin Eldridge's office has begun the process of working with Ms. Johnson's office to verify that all of these people are registered voters. So given the short time, that process has already begun. So we would ask for both ratification of that and that we continue to do that so that Ms. Eldridge's office may present a report to council on the validity of the voter registration for these various signatories.
Sure. So what we're getting ready to do, ladies and gentlemen, is simply acknowledge that there is a petition. The verification.
There's been a supplement as well.
A petition and a supplement. The verification process is underway. On our meeting in November 8th, we will have a report from Robin. And subsequent to that report, we'll take action either way. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes, Mayor. The council has 20 days, so the deadline would be the 8th.
Okay. So does that make sense to everybody? We're here today to get some clarification from Ms. Johnson, to get clarification on what council was thinking during this process, to look at what has happened in the past few days, but primarily to acknowledge the petition. We can't do anything other than acknowledge it until all of the signatures and the birth dates and the addresses and the names or whatever is on the petition, until they are verified and validated. Then we can take official action. To your point, Mr. Mishtich, we can take official action as it relates to setting a date for an election. Did I say that correctly, Gus?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. So let me read item 5, new business. 5A, discussion possible action regarding petitions received by the city pursuant to the Texas Code. Looks like S26.05, 0.075?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
The Texas tax code.
Okay. Texas tax code S 26.075, and to provide direction to staff. I'll entertain a motion. And this motion is to simply receive the petition and the supplement at this point. No other action needed.
I move to receive the petition and the supplement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have one point of information. As a person that has watched Lamarck politics from the seat of Lick City, just moving back in the last 6 years, I do ask that we maintain our professionalism and that we keep it to the facts and to the issue at hand. People like to watch Lamarck fodder and entertainment because we tend to bring that. But there are some things that are non-negotiables. And our families, that's one. You do not attack our families. That is totally out of line and unprofessional. Keep it to the issue. This is the democratic process. This is what we're doing as Americans. We have a right to petition. That's the beauty of the country that we live in. But the beauty of democracy is that it involves all of us and just not one person. So please, let's keep it professional and let's keep it American, which is, let's be people of integrity. There are some non-negotiable. I'm a new elected official and I love what I'm doing. It's made me love my country even more. But there are some things that I will not allow you to touch. And I ask that you respect my privacy and respect my family and my fellow councilman's family. Those are non-negotiables. I was shocked and appalled at what I've seen the last couple of days. And thank you, Robert, for saying that. That meant a lot. That you want to keep it on the issue, which is taxes. And if we are intelligent and professional people, that's what we'll do. Please do not allow Lamarck to be the laughingstock of our county, as she has been years past. Let's make this a teachable process where we can show people what the American democracy is and why we love her so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Joe.
Mayor, you mentioned the meeting on November 8th. I want our residents to know and understand that I may have to participate on that via Zoom because I'll be attending a Houston Galveston area council meeting that night as the rep. So
you did say that. Very good. Robert, to your point, part of this process, at the end of the day, let's be clear, it is the city clerk's responsibility to provide a report on this petition. Part of it is verifying whether or not these folks are voters. Part of it is verifying that they have accurate birth dates and that their names are spelled correctly. That's part of the process. In light of, Robert, a news report from Ms. Emma that suggested that perhaps there may be some issues with the petition. Now, the way that we clear that up, Robert, is we get the company that did the petition to come and visit with us on November 8th, right? So if there's a company that that was used to get the petitions, all we have to do is bring those folks in, have a conversation with them to see what those issues were, right? Because we're doing our due diligence, and then we'll move forward. And that's the legal way, and that's the fair way to do it. Gus will not be a part of this. I've said all along, there's no reason to bring attorneys into this. We just need to make sure that the signatures are verified. If they're verified and there are enough, then we will begin this debate, which I've said before. I'm excited about it because we get to sit in front of the Lamarck people and discuss taxes and revenues and services, right? Outside of Facebook, right? Where people can see apples and oranges in the same way that myself and Ms. Johnson had a whole conversation and we agreed and we had differences, but the people saw the conversation in real time. It wasn't a soundbite or snapshot. And that's what we're going to have to do so the people can be educated, and what they decide we'll follow. But I can promise you that, my friend, if in fact they are valid, we're going to do everything in our power to bring this to the people in every way we possibly can. But what we have to stop doing is we have to stop making these accusations all over social media that aren't based and rooted in fact, because that confuses our people and divides our city. And a divided city is a sitting duck for all sorts of other issues as they relate to crime. But my friend, I can promise you that the petition will go through, the signatures will be verified, and if this company can come and bring information to us that will clear up what Emma wrote in her article, we're good. Promise you that. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. We are now set to adjourn. I'll make a motion. Well, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Chief, give us 10 minutes to set the room up. And would it be possible for us to start at 2, Safe City? Those of you that are interested, we're having a Safe City Initiative meeting at 2:00. We stand adjourned.
We have some distinguished guests and very, very experienced executives here attending. I see my friends over there, Chief Taylor, and of course we got, that looks like Councilwoman McCullough. And we have our council members here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around the room and just give a brief overview of your current role. And then we'll start, okay? So let's start with our Mayor Pro Tem, Joe Campion.
Joe Campion here, Mayor Pro Tem, District B.
District A.
Okay, we just go around the room from our DA, District Attorneys here.
Jack Rhodey, District Attorney.
Thank you, Jack, for coming. Paige,
Paige Michelle, Texas City Lamarque Chamber of Commerce.
okay.
Vincent Herrera, Director of Engineering, Texas, New Mexico Power.
Thank you.
Charles Wiley, retired Galveston PD.
Mike Matrenga, owner of M6 Global Defense.
Okay. And on Zoom, we have one of my ex-students, he's now Chief of Police, Roy Taylor, Lieutenant Colonel Reserve, Dr. Roy Taylor. Roy, go ahead and say hello.
Good afternoon. Thanks for participating. I'm looking forward to a productive meeting and hopefully see some crime reduction pretty quickly, but should be exciting. Randall's always a good planner and executor.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate that. Taking time from your duties. I see Lawrence's iPad. It's Lawrence is the retired Chief of Police from Little Rock, Arkansas. Lawrence, say hello. If you're there. All right. He's probably stepped away. Deputy Chief Wagner, say hello.
Yes, sir. Hello, everybody.
Okay, glad to see you. We got our city manager here.
Good afternoon, Chase Carey, the interim city manager.
Kyle, thank you. Kyle's here. Kyle Hunter's the IT and emergency management coordinator. We have our city clerk, Robin. Okay, we have the media here. We got our marshal, Russell Washington here. Okay, just a little bit about some of you. Chief Charles Wiley, we've been following each other for 30 or 40 years, and he used to be working in Charleston PD. He was chief of Galveston, and a lot of you I know from the past. But let me tell you about what we're doing today. It's a 3-phase project, Safe City Initiative, Lamarque Safe City Initiative. The mayor, Mayor Bell, Keith Bell, this was a vision for the last couple of years. And when I came aboard, he asked me to bring it to fruition. So we're gonna really try to do things to help Lamarque become a safer city. And as the mayor said, probably the safest, if possible, the safest city in the state. That's his vision, and it's a great vision. We need it. You'll see the stats that we're gonna be bringing out. I'm gonna pass it around. You're gonna see exactly what's wrong with our crime rates. And we're gonna be talking about, this is phase 1, which is gonna be just like an opening, the icebreaker. We're gonna talk about what causes crime, how it looks in Lamarque. And phase 2 will be sometime in November, tentatively set for the week of November the 22nd. There we're gonna have citizens submit emails to me, text messages to me, and talk about what they think we should do. We're sitting at the table, and on Zoom, we have experts, people that work with crime and have worked, see what works, what doesn't work, and what shows promise. I had Dr. Everett Penn scheduled. He couldn't make it. He's a criminologist. He teaches at University of Houston Clear Lake. I think Chuck, Charles, you know him, and a PhD type, good criminologist. He's going to watch. This is going to be on YouTube, so he'll be watching it, and anybody that's not here can watch it and see what we're doing. Okay, the phase 3 is going to be tentatively set for the week of January 17th. And that's what, prior to that meeting, my vision is, as a moderator, is to have some solutions developed so we can present it to our community. Look what we got here. We got all these people that worked in crime, law enforcement, PhDs, Dr. Taylor, got some great thinkers. We're going to come up with some goals. And as I usually do, I do not like too many goals, because you start stumbling, and I always try to under promise and over deliver. If I have 5 goals, as the mayor wanted, he wants a 1-year plan, 3-year plan, and a 5-year plan. So we have 5 goals for each. I'm satisfied because, you know, you've seen people come up with all these pie in the sky goals and objectives, and they never get them done because there's too many. So let's keep it to, you know, a low roar, so to speak. So today is we're going to be talking about crime, what causes crime, and what the crime situation looks for our city. I spent a lot of time putting this together, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but this is stuff I think we need. I'm going to pass this around. Starting out, Kyle, I think what we'll do, we'll start out with causes of crime first, okay? It's the fact, he's going to put it on the screen, and the panelists are getting the paper showing it. Now, the FBI has basically stated there's 13 factors that cause crime. 13, I've used this for years, and you're looking at it right now and you say, wow, I didn't think that weather has something to do with crime. It does. Let's look at it real quick. First one, that you, Jack?
Yes, sir.
Population density. Can you share that? Go. Okay, there it is. Population density. You see that, Dr. Taylor?
I do now. I can, and I've got the documents you emailed to me, so I can look at it either shared or
I emailed
through your email. Yes, sir.
Variations in the composition of population, to stability of the population, or how mobile is it, modes of transportation. And there's 13 of them right here. And they all add to what causes crime or reduces crime. When I give my speeches, usually I want you to look down there. There's really only 2 ways the police department or the law enforcement can reduce it, because we only control those 2. We look at effective strength of the law enforcement agency and the administrative and investigative emphasis of law enforcement. Those are the only 2 things we have control of. I think everybody in law enforcement would agree. All these others are outside of our realm. So it has a lot to do with demographics, socioeconomic conditions, and so forth. Okay, I just want you to look at that. Okay, Kyle, if you would, we'll go to the next one. You don't have, you do not have this, so you'll have to look at the screen. This is the demographics that I want to show you of our city of Lamarck, and I put the things up there that I believe you that are real critical. Our population, and that, of course, is really around 1804, but this, you here. Can I take this with me? Yeah. Okay. Our population is about 1804. Can't see it.
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. Shows our incomes, and land area is 14.2 miles. On this, there's a page here at the top. Look at it actually shows the unemployment rate from 1990 to 2020. Lamarck's is the highest for almost every year. By the way, the unemployment rate effective May 2021 for Lamarck was 8.2%. For Galveston County was 6.3. Texas is 5.9, and the United States is 6. So our unemployment rate is high. Going to the next page, I'll switch over to races. You'll see our race, dense population of the races. White, just white strictly is 34%. Hispanic 31. Obviously, you add those two together, we're about 65% white, because Hispanic is an ethnicity, not a race. Black population is 30%, Asians about 3%. Next page, violent crime. The red is us, City of Lemoore. You see it beats the state rate and the USA rate almost every year. Property crime. By the way, violent crime is murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. Property crime is the others, burglary, larceny, auto theft. And you can see our property rate, crime rate is high. We beats all of them. Crime in the nearby cities, essentially, we're above everyone. Bayou Vista, Hitchcock, Santa Fe, Dickinson, we beat them all. Next page, it's the same thing, Santa Fe, Dickinson, we're way above it. This next one on page 6, you could see Lamarck's rate, which is the blue, the Houston area in Texas, we beat them all. Next page, it's not a page, it's the index crime rate column, the 10 years. There it is. We're the gray, way above everybody else. Councilman Yancey, this is what you wanted. Okay. Go to the interim report on the 21st century policing column. In 2015, President Obama put together a task force, you probably heard about it, on 21st century policing. It was actually published in 2016. There were 99 pages with 62 recommendations. And it's on the screen right now. Just wanted to tell you that of those, 3 of them related to community-oriented policing, implementing community-oriented policing, which we're in the process of doing. You probably read some editorials about that. And I wanted to say this, Margaret Gardner, I've never met her. She works for the Galveston County Daily News. You probably read hopefully, if you haven't read it, you need to read that editorial. There's light at the end of the rainbow, or at the end of the tunnel, sorry. There's light at the end of the tunnel because it keeps talking, the whole article actually states things are happening here, and it really warms my heart and makes me happy because it was positive about where we're going. And a lot of this is due to the mayor, his direction, forward together, and things such as we're doing now, working on ways to prevent and control crime, restore and maintain order, reduce citizens' fear of crime. It's happening, and that's what we're here today, actually do that. So we have Ms. Emma Collins here. She wrote an article the other day about community policing. She got it right. Everything we talked is happening. Okay, let's go to the crime stat page. It's a 5-year crime stats file. There it is on the board. This is a hard thing to read. I've used this for my last 20-something years as a chief, and essentially it shows from year to year the increase or the decrease in the crime rate. As an example, you have that in front of you, panelists. Let's look at down the bottom, Lamarck's violent crime rate. See that on the left? Shoot over to the right. Oh, sorry. You slide over from where it says Lamarck's violent crime rate, shoot over to the far right. Let's say like 2020. That figure of 28% is the increase from the year prior, which is 2019. It was 416 crime rate, the violent crime rate. It went to 532, and it's a 28% increase. You see that? Okay. It shows that, and it shows the property crime rate below that, 2,406, and it actually went down 7%. Crime rate makes every city be equal, no matter how large or small it is. It's actually the numerator is the number of crimes, like in the let's go with the property crime rate. It's forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and murder. You add all those up and you divide it by the population of that city, and then you multiply it times 100,000. So it doesn't matter what size city you have, Bayou Vista, whatever. That's an important figure. So that your crime rate, and that crime rate, violent crime rate and the property crime rate is pretty high. You saw that the stats were way above just about every city. Okay.
Chief, just for clarification, if I understand this chart, and people are listening in, so I want to make sure they understand what we're seeing here, is that while our murder rate has gone up 50% from what, from 2 to 3, is that accurate? From,
Okay,
we had 2 deaths in
you look at this one.
2020, yes.
2020, it says we have 2 murders.
And this year, up to this point, it's 3.
3.
And that represents the 50%.
Correct.
And so, once again,
That's just January through September.
and
this year.
because sometimes we get bogged down in statistics.
I know.
And the numbers also are important, although crime of any level, especially murder, is bad. And so our rapes are then 11 in 2020 versus 13 in 2021 up to this point.
Yeah,
And
right.
then the other 3 categories of robbery, aggravated assault, Marque violent crime totals, those percentages, once again, those indicate reductions of 60%, 23%, and 24%. And your numbers up to this point in those categories are 8, 47, and 71. So these statistics come from the Marque Police Department.
Correct.
Is that correct? All right.
But I think the difference in that, Joe, is that the numbers for 2020 are for 12 months. The numbers for 2021 is just for 6
It's
or 9 months. Yeah.
What happens is PDs throughout the United States, we have 18,000 agencies submit their crime reports to their state level. The state level sends it to the FBI, and that's where it's formulated. Most of these figures we got off the Department of Public Safety from Texas, their rates. And you can read that, it's open to the public, it's on, you go online, but that's what that is. And we're showing here on the top right, January through September this year, which is not finished yet, versus the same period last year. So down the bottom, I mean, it's not crime rates, but I wanted to show calls for service, and they've been about the same, around 10,000, 8 to 10,000. Our population, I put 18.4 for the population. Now, at the next one, LAPD/Texas, that's the officers per 1,000. And I wanted to compare us against the state rate. Officers per 1,000, you take as a numerator, you take the number of officers you have, the bottom, the denominator, you use the actual population, then you multiply that times 1,000. That's officers per 1,000. So, we're kind of aligned somewhat with the state rate, not much difference. Okay.
Chief, on these crime statistics, and if they can, I don't know, we've got a lot of significant brain power here, but can they, that experience in this, can these be broken out by, well, let's say by council persons districts or sections of the city? That would be helpful.
I don't have that, but it can be done.
It can be done, yeah.
In fact, we don't have the program. Charles, you know what I'm talking about, the overlay program. It's got the name of it. Mike, you probably know what it is. Where you could actually, it's one of my goals that I want to bring out, is citizens could go online and hit their area, and it would show a number like 5 that would be robberies. And when you're moving in, you could actually as far as I know, we do not have that, but it's doable and it takes overlays and we could purchase that. And that'd be nice to show you areas exactly. Okay.
And would that also include, which I don't see in any of this, but I kind of monitor it, the number of sex offenders that live within the city limits of the city of Lamarck?
I think it can do that. I think it can do that. That's online. You can get that.
Yeah, that is online. That's where I go to. Yeah.
That probably could be added on there in that area. Yep. It would probably refer you to the DPS site. So that is doable. And that's something I was going to talk about. I'd like to get that program. There's an expense involved. Our reports is what makes that program. It goes into the system and it's processed.
There's multiple softwares out there.
Yeah.
One that we used at TCISD that we brought in was called Ally. It was a product of Motorola.
Okay.
And it's basically a full dispatch center, but it's also statistics driven. And what it does is it'll populate your crime and show you where all your hotspots are at. And so,
Exactly. It's easy. Citizens.
super easy.
Yeah.
Really nice. Pretty inexpensive.
No,
But,
I think Chad, are you online?
Yes, sir.
We thought about that at one point, didn't we, get in that program?
Right.
We don't have it now, of course.
No, we do not. We do not have it now.
A lot of cities have it. It's a cost.
Okay, it's a full-scale RMS system that, for gentlemen like our DA, Mr. Rhodey, it'll, for your investigators, it'll put everything in chronological order, for prosecution, print it out, tied up in a bow.
It also allows you to target specific areas of the community, like that hotspot council just mentioned.
Yeah, it'll show you where all of your crime is, originating from. It's a very nice system.
Right.
And Mr. Pachanga, you said TCISD has it already?
We had it.
Oh, you had it.
Since I left in July, I'm not sure if we still have it, but it would definitely, if we do still have it, it would be a force multiplier if Texas City PD and Lamarck PD had it, because we could share data.
And that's something that is not, if one were to subscribe to it, I guess it's a subscription service, right? Can it be done in a collective manner? Or okay,
Yes,
all right.
Very nice system.
Yeah,
It even breaks out all of your investigative players, puts everything into a spreadsheet, and identifies your suspects. It's a very nice system. All the people that you've got a conspiracy and you're linking two cases together. It's very nice system.
You go to our website, press on it.
Yeah.
There it is.
No, very good.
It's an RMS system for law.
Okay.
That's doable. Okay, you've seen all the stats. I don't think we have any left, Kyle. 5-year stats, 10-year stats, the task force on 21st century policing, causes of crime. What I want to do is really wanted to save citizen comments for our second meeting, because today I just wanted to give an overview what our goal is. And so, lighting's a factor. That's why Vincent, you're here. We had a meeting with the mayor, you and I, and Councilwoman Yancey, and explained to you we need some help. And you want to talk about that real quick, about where we're going on the lighting?
Yeah, basically, we're looking at the existing street lighting, working with the local city police department, whatever, as far as identifying areas where lights are out. And, that process of getting them turned on. If a citizen notices that the street light at their corner is out, they can look on I think it's the city website, and then the TDP website to report that light out. And then working with the local authorities, trying to identify areas where lighting could be improved and come up with a plan to do that.
Okay, we're supposed to meet in January, I think. I mentioned that.
I'd have to look at the calendar. Yeah, I don't recall.
Was it Councilwoman Yancey?
Right, we said January.
Okay.
But I know some of the lights, thank you, but some lights have been replaced, so we need a lot more work. That's
Sure.
gonna happen, but I see that he started.
Our local construction site working.
Just to mention this, we use high pressure sodium. That's the standardized lighting with most cities, because it's less expensive than the better ones, which were ports, and now it's LED. So if you really want to get, Cadillac, you want the LED right now, because price of them is even less than quartz. So we talked about that. There's a cost for that.
There's a cost for that. The lights, the LED lights, their cost is going down, but right now they're still more expensive than the standard high pressure sodium.
Excuse me. So then who pays for that cost increase?
That cost, there's a monthly cost that's additional, and that is passed through to the city on their electric bill. So that would go to the city.
So who pays to switch our lights, all our lights to LED? Who would pay that bill?
There would be a cost to the city.
The city would pay that
The
bill.
city would pay that.
That's the point I'm
If
trying to
you
make.
did- If you did just a wholesale change out, which is not possible just because there's not enough lights available right now. And I forget how many we had, 500 or 600. It was between 500 or 600.
Is LED, is it, do they shine brighter?
Yes. It's a white light, which will usually takes, the citizens become very accustomed to the soothing orange amber light,
But if we want to be safer, we want the LED.
Bright white light, you're gonna get some complaints about them, usually up front. That always happens.
But if we want to be safer, we get the LED. And then the LED is going to cost more.
They last
And,
longer.
and that cost is going to be passed on to the city government. How does the city government raise revenue?
That I know.
Through taxation.
Well, that's.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I thought
See,
you said
everything-
when
everything-
I'm sorry, Chief. I thought you said when we met that if the light was broken,
If the light is irreparable.
if the light is irreparable, then you guys would switch over to LED if we requested that.
Yes, but there's still that monthly, part of the monthly bill that goes up. There's no cost to change it out.
What's the difference in cost?
I don't recall.
And the notes that I have for LED lighting is $104.
That was the change out cost. I
Right, that
believe.
was the
Yes.
change, to
If
change.
we change the working light
Right.
with the LED light, it was $104.
Now, but there was no cost if we had the same type of lighting we installed. That's
Correct.
the notes that I have.
That's correct. And then say in a new subdivision, the city requires the developer to go with LED lights.
Right.
That is charged to the subdivision. Okay, so that is included in their cost to put it in. So I mean, that's possible.
What about cost sustainability of the LEDs versus the traditional lights? What's the life expectancy of either?
I think the LEDs, the life expectancy is longer than the traditional high pressure solar.
We're talking like years?
Yes.
Year, okay.
We looked at all those factors, would come in our cost. And most of it is just the cost of the light itself.
It's got uses less power too.
Yes, it
And
does.
everything. That's another factor.
Yes, they're more efficient than the standard high pressure solar.
So it may be more of a investment initially, but long-term sustainability as far as maintenance and replacement.
Yeah.
LEDs.
The typical LED is a bunch of little lights, whereas, your standard high pressure solar is just a light bulb. So
Are you guys familiar with any type of grants for municipalities?
I am not. I'm sure there's something. I know some of the cities have been working with that.
There are. That's why I'm getting through Houston Galveston Area Council. They're providing, and you have to know this, a lot of the Department of Justice grants are kind of directed through HGAC. Some of the crime victims grants are we have some groups here in the county that are recipients of those, but that's a goal, is to identify those. And then if I'm not incorrect in saying this, Robin, we're also subscribing to something that I privately used to subscribe to, but the grants, not grants, I think it's called Grant Station. It's a software that will set forth then the all funding opportunities that are available to municipalities as well, so that we can take advantage of them.
Does the city of Marque have a grant writer on staff?
That's something that we have been discussing. We have. In the meantime, I'm going to.
We don't have.
I'll put,
Grant works with you.
We partner with GrantWorks.
And that's something that we have to understand too, for municipal type of grants, or so the state puts something out. So we have
The Houston Endowment, for example, they offer certain funding opportunities for local municipalities. If you do it in conjunction with, say, a youth initiative or some sort of crime victims assistance
Yeah.
initiative.
I think the
So-
Houston Galveston Area Council will help.
Exactly,
Right.
on that side, yes, sir, Chief, you're right on that.
I agree with Chief. HGAC, I believe, does have someone who can help with that. And then at Texas City ISD, we used Resource Associates. It was a fee involved, but it was a small fee and well worth it. We wrote an 86-page grant, 2.2 million. So, and we didn't get it the first year, but they applied the second year for a very small fee. So
We need to look at that. Chase, will Grant Works help us with stuff like that?
Yes, sir.
What about stuff for the PD? Anything like that? Okay. Thank you, Bishop.
Pleasure.
Okay, let's go around and talk to some of our subject matter experts. Dr. Taylor, are you checking off there? Are you still available?
Yep, I'm still here. Just listening. I think, the main thing you need to focus on is something you're excellent at, Randall, and that's community policing. I mean, LED lights and all these other things really don't make a difference if we don't have, that relationship and bond with the community so they feel comfortable in talking with us. And I'm very happy to see the councilman and the mayor pro temp and the clerk, everybody, because what I always believed in when I would implement community policing into my agencies was community-oriented government, and that requires everybody so that we can address more of those factors that Randall addressed earlier, because there is limits to what the police department can do, but there isn't a limit to what the government as a total entity can do. So by working closely together and having those sensing sessions with the citizens, finding out what they're concerned with. I mean, we're looking at the murder rate and the rape rate things, but what really is bothering your citizens, and find out, from them what they want you to address on. And that's how I always address my priorities, is based on what the citizens actually want. So the people that are interested enough in their community to come to your meetings and to be active, they're going to give you some good feedback, and then you can address it, because, LED lights may not really change anything. You may have adequate lumens with your iodine lights. They may not look as nice, it may not put out as much, but lighting may not solve the problem. I would look first at hosting some meetings and get the feedback from the citizens before I spend any extra money. The high visible presence of law enforcement throughout the community is always an easy thing to do. Just make sure the officers have assigned sectors, assigned officers, cell phones, so the community members can reach out to them directly, has always been very popular. That way the officer doesn't have to give out their personal number, but they have a government cell phone that the citizens can call. And I always told my officers, if you want to answer it on your days off, you're welcome to. And I tell the citizens that your community officer may be off duty when you need them, but as long as it's not an emergency or something that needs immediate response, leave them a voicemail. When they're back on the clock, they'll be back in touch with you. So anyway, I just see that, looking at your statistics and everything, that the biggest thing that the police department can do is, again, implement community-oriented policing and, really start getting the feedback from the citizens.
Thank you, Chief. Look, we're already doing that. And as Galveston County Daily News mentioned recently, we're kicking that off, and we're going to start off with our first one to be in the Lake Road area. And in fact, we did that in 2009 when we rebooted up. Community-oriented policing is necessary. We're basically doing reactive policing right now, traditional policing. And we've got to go back to preventive policing, which is community policing. And that's going to happen. And I guess you all know the difference between reactive and preventive. Sure.
And that's something, Chief, let me just interject here. That's something that we have tried since you left. Not this council, but councils before this council have tried with the previous administration in the police department and in the city manager's office to move back toward community policing. And so the reason that you are here today is because this council has understood that our best opportunity to prevent crime and to resolve issues with crime is through community-oriented policing, akin to community-oriented governance that we have already employed on this council. The fact that we have town halls, we interact, we go out into the community, they work hand in hand. And so I'm glad that Dr. Taylor brought that out for us to understand. And again, essentially, that's the reason that you're here, is because you brought community-oriented policing to our city years back, and our crime was reduced drastically. And so we are expecting, as you move through this city in this your second tenure, that we can receive some reduction in crime as well. Thank you for that, Dr. Taylor.
May I?
My
ask a
pleasure.
question? Chief Aragon, so I'm delighted that this is happening, but I think there's just like one really big thing that's important to me with all of these smart people in the room is that we establish a definition of what community-oriented policing means. I feel like it's one of those terms that can be maybe a little inside baseball for some folks, or that you ask 10 different people, you get 10 different answers about what community-oriented policing actually translates into. And so I've heard a lot about the policies that you put in place during your tenure here. And I imagine everyone at this table and all the different council people have different ideas about what that means. But I'd like to hear sort of your vision about what that means for the city of Lamarck and for anyone else at the table.
Yep. Councilwoman McCollum, yes, community-oriented policing it shifts the focus. I'll just give you a brief definition. It shifts the focus of officers answering random calls to that of problem solving, where they build a genuine partnership with the community by going and meeting with them and firsthand determining what their needs and priorities are, and then working up solutions. So it takes officers moving away from I call it the theme or the paradigm of call the police, send a car, make an arrest, to that of actually working with the community in solving their contemporary community problems. It also takes the officer to work being responsible for certain areas of the community. Now, we're not a big enough department to actually have an officer assigned to an area and only work that area to become, to build a partnership with that sector. When we did it before, I used the model, and Chief Wiley remembers this when Galveston, I guess, Charleston, where Johnny Jones, Officer Jones, is assigned to, say, Lake Road area, and he works the whole city. When the call, it could be north, south, east, west, he goes to that or she goes to that. But he keeps an eyeball on that area, that little block area, which like Lake Road, when we sectored it off, it became his sector. In fact, Harvey Walton, I'll give you an full example. Harvey's now a detective. He was assigned to Lake Road North, which became a community watch. It was 1765 on the north. The south was Boss. The east was Bayou, and the west was Preston. That small rectangular area was Harvey Walton's area. He was trained what community policing is, how to build these partnerships, how to solve problems using the principles of problem solving. And we had a kickoff meeting in 2010, I think it was March. And we had a full house. We had maybe 40, 50 citizens show up. I introduced Harvey, gave him his credentials. He said hello. Then we went around the room and we asked what the concerns were. And I wrote them on a big sticky note. And there were a lot of concerns. Dogs running at large, drugs, shots being fired in the middle of the night, so on and on and on. Then I actually asked for a vote on prioritizing what they were. We got the top three. We listed them down, and we asked them to name that community watch, and they named it Lake Road North. I already knew who was pretty good candidate for community watch chairperson, and they voted on that person. And then we voted on a couple of block captains to help that person. The officer networked with the community watch chairperson and sometimes when they were gone with the block captains. We came back in about 45 days, same meeting. Of course, I had less citizens show up because they know we're doing something now. But anyway, there's maybe 15 or 20 showed up and then we delivered. We actually told them what we did for those 3 top concerns. And then we had meetings about every 3 months after that. Then we started with Lake Road South, which was the little block, square block below that. In fact, Bo Hunter, I've already talked about, well, Morris Martin talked to Bo, and he's want to come back and be our chairperson. Again, 6 years later, Bo's going to be the chairperson for Lake Road South. I'm going to do the same thing with North. Anyway, we ended up with 15 community watches in our whole city. Every area in our city had an officer assigned, and it worked. And like Councilwoman Yancey said, the fear of crime went down big time, because when you know you have an officer that's actually, if there's a little problem that's bothering you, you know the same officer is going to go out there, not the first officer out of the chute. That makes them happy. And look, when I retire, I want to have an officer. I don't want just anybody to show up. I want that same guy that's heard my complaints 16 times. I want that same guy there. Now, of course, when they had problems, they went up the chain of command. If the officer couldn't solve the problem, I ended up getting it. Chad, Deputy Chief Wagner, he was there. He remembers this. So what it does, it personalizes the policing effort rather than being reactive. And look, I hold them responsible to solve the problems. I mean, if they keep having the same problems and they're not sending in our special response team or asking for help, shame on the officer. That's what they're being trained to do, is work on the issues and solving the problems jointly with the community. And as you see our little logo, I'm bringing that back. It's the handshake. The top says partnership. There's two stick figures shaking hands, and the left side says police and the right side says community. You can't say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So that's where we're going.
Yeah. One other thing, Randall, if I can interject something, just to answer Casey's question, because I agree with her that community policing becomes a buzzword in the law enforcement circles, especially. But what community policing really is a philosophy, and it starts at the top with the leader and goes through the entire organization. So, it's a top-down approach so that the officers understand that they're problem solvers. I tell all my officers, I don't ever hear, that's not my problem, I can't help you with it. They need to be able to resolve issues for people, even if it is outside the law enforcement sphere. Everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket today that they can Google, if you got a bird in a house or some other non-law enforcement issue, but they can assist in being a resource for the community. And that's part of the philosophy. Everything, the chief said is correct, but I like to always remind it's community policing philosophy. And a lot of agencies will have a community policing office or a community policing officer, just one. And that's not the intent. It's, Sir Isaac Peale that said, the people are the police and the police are the people. And that's what we want to do, is work together, because everybody out there, for the most part, has 2 eyes and 2 ears. And they're going to hear things and see things when the uniformed officer isn't around, and they're going to be able to, share that information. And we want to feel like they are a partner in making their community safer and less crime-free.
I want to say this before we move on. When we started in 2010, I think it was March, I had Harvey with me, myself, and I think I had Lieutenant Sproul. And they already received. I think I told the mayor and a couple of council members, they already received the training, and they said, what do we do now? I said, we're going to go out and knock on some doors on Lake Road. And they said, what? Okay, so we started, all 3 of us, we knocked on, I forgot where it was, and they came to the door, and it was like their eyes were, what'd we do? And I said, you didn't do anything. We're doing community-oriented policing. And we explained it, and they still wouldn't let us in. So I said, can we come in and sit down and talk? And they said, yeah. Okay, so we sat down and talked. We took a little survey. It was a 3-question survey. What are your concerns? Rank them and whatever. And stayed about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And they were they were stunned. Like, the police are in our house and we didn't do anything wrong, but this is great. They didn't say that, we see it in their face. So we went to another house and did the same thing. And then we went to a third house and he opened the door. He said, come on in. We can't wait to see you. He said, we just got a call from our neighbors that the police are here and we should have a seat. We had to actually give an excuse to leave. They wanted to feed us and give us food and drinks. This went on. Harvey said, Harvey was a hero. And when we went back to the 45-day meeting, the revisit to deliver, he was so happy. Anyway, I just want to let you know, they were arriving at their door and they didn't do anything wrong. And it's the first time that we've seen a police officer wanting to help them. So it worked. And we did that through the whole city. So trust me, it's going to work. And Roy knows that's in my DNA, I think, this community policing. And in fact, Roy kept, Dr. Tip was one of my students when I was teaching college way back. Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Tip. Okay, with that, Lawrence is not there. He's maybe whatever. Anybody else on the panel have anything to say? Charles, you want to say anything? Chief?
Only that I think it's important to get out in the community, as you said, and express to people who live in the community that it's a two-way flow of information. We want to hear what you have to say.
Exactly.
Attend these neighborhood association meetings, and where there are no neighborhood associations, create them, help them create them, and work with them, and have the officers assigned to them. I think Lamarque is unique because it's a small town. And what I heard from council members and the mayor earlier is encouraging, because that's the first step in having a successful community-oriented policing program, is have it supported by your local officials. So that's good. That's a good thing. I'm curious about a couple of things that I heard about problems with collective bargaining and that sort of thing. It's important that our officers know that we support them, whether we're elected officials or whether we're citizens in the community. And a big part of that support is having a salary that's meaningful to them, so they don't have to worry about other things external to what they do. The salary is good, the benefits are good, the conditions are good, they'll do a good job for you. I think that's important, and that's a good first step. And council, I think, has already taken that first step to a large degree. So that's
yes.
And Chief, the vast majority, Chief, here I am, Chief, the vast majority of our citizens are willing to make the investment, right? At the end of the day, this comes down to how we finance this. And at the end of the day, at the core of that is taxation. We cannot get around it, Chief. There is no way to get around it. Anybody that believes that they support what we're trying to do to make our city safe, anybody believes that they are in support of the police department, anybody that believes that they back the blue, cannot get around this one elephant in the room. And that is, we are going to have to make some decisions to make investments to keep our city safe. We can say all day long, we want to support the police. But if we're doing things that are actively undermining our police's ability to address and resolve crime, then we are not who we say we are. Then the next question comes in. If we're doing that and we say we support police, then why are we doing it? And that's the bigger question that we have to answer. And that will come out like every other truth will come out, right? Why are we doing this? Because what we're doing is hurting our officers' ability to provide service. And even Mr. Matranga will tell you that taxation is instrumental to providing services. We can't get around that. You cut taxes, then you're cutting services. Happens every day.
I think in the end, you let the citizens make the decision. They either want to pay for it or not.
That's right.
And that's what it's all about.
That's right. But we're doing everything in our power to let people know what this is all about. We desperately have to make our city safer. And we have to do things that we are in other times and in other seasons that we may not be willing to do. It's that vital for Lamarque. When you look at what Chief Oregon put out, gave us excellent work, Chief. When you start to look at this, you look at violent crimes, you look at the average of the state being 24.8, Lamarque being 36.4, Why are we talking about cutting taxes when we are at 36.4 and the state average is 24.8? When we're talking about property taxes, the state average is 38. Lamarck's average is 77.3. Why are we talking about cutting taxes when we know that we have a problem in our city? What's the real reason? Because all is going to happen, Mike. All is going to happen. You know this better than I do. You protect the president. All that's going to happen if they were to cut President Obama's budget when you were protecting him, would he be more or less safe? I already know that you know the answer. The answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. We talk about making Lamarck the safest city of the state of Texas. In order to do that, it's going to require funds. If it's a tax increase, it's got to be a tax increase. If the funds have to come through grant money, it's got to come through grant money. But I think that, from my perspective, growing up here, traveling the world, seeing the things that a lot of people don't normally see, is I understand the socioeconomics of how this works. We have a lot more problems in the little town of Lamarque than what people want to address. A lot of that has to do with education. A lot of that has to do with the median income.
Yeah.
Transient community, natural disasters and whatnot. And so I'm here to tell you that I pledge that I'll do everything within my power to make this the safest city in the state of Texas. If it's through technical resources or scientific studies that examines human behavior or socioeconomic statuses, then that's what we need to do. But in regards to community policing, my tidbit is that I completely agree with the approach. I believe that the better relationships that you have with people, the less likely they are to harm you. The approach that the chief has had in the past and is going to have moving forward, getting out and walking the streets, shaking hands, letting people know that the first time you see a law enforcement officer shouldn't be,
That's right.
when you're in trouble or when you're suspected of being in trouble. It's to say, hey, this is who we are. We want to form a relationship. We want to form a partnership so that when we do have to come to your aid in the event you call us, you can see us as an ally and not an adversary. And I commend you. I commend the council for putting together this approach. I was critical 2 months ago after one of the shootings. I tagged a lot of you and said, do something. I did. I tagged all of you in a Facebook post and said, do something. This is you doing something. So thank you,
Yes, sir,
for doing that. So I agree with the approach moving forward, but you're right. It's somebody's got to pay for it. Whether it be increased salaries for your law enforcement officers to increase their morale, a very healthy workforce and law enforcement staff you're going to see the fruits of that in the community. And so I support it. And so thank you for doing something.
So just quick question. If we know it's needed, right, Mike? And you've been, kind of going back and forth with us, we all are trying to get to the same place. If we know that we're going to need more resources to give to our police department to help them resolve crime, why are we at this point where we're fighting that if we say we support police?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. I haven't.
Ask those that are fighting it.
And we'll get to the truth. We know the truth. We'll get to the bottom of it and we'll move the city forward. Go ahead, Chief.
I think that I've told you that the tax increase is needed.
I know you have. We've spoken privately about it. I didn't want to put that in your mouth. Right. I mean, I didn't want to put those words in your mouth.
Nobody likes increased taxes, but at the end of the day, you have to have something to pay for your resources. It has to come through taxes, it has to come through donation, or it has to come through grant money.
Right.
So if we're going to fulfill the request of wanting a safer city, we've got to find a way to finance it. And so I think that the majority of the people in the city, the surrounding cities, understand that. So I'm here to help you do whatever we need to do to make this your.
I'm glad you're here, Mike.
Success.
Thank you.
Mike, well said. Thank you so much. our DA's here and, one of the factors was the prosecutorial situation that causes crime. I know, I've known Jack over 10 years and he amazes me. You're not soft on crime, that's for sure. And you're very proficient. You want to add something to this conversation?
Sure. Chief, I'm glad to see the city taking this direction. First time I met Chief Aragon was at one of those initial meetings, 2009, 2010, I think it's when that was.
Yeah.
And there's been discussion about how community-oriented policing can make people feel safer and reduce crime, but it also has the benefit of helping solve crime. One of the biggest issues that I think Lamarque and other cities solve or struggle with is the problem of unsolved crimes. And a lot of times that is because witnesses are unwilling to come forward because they don't have a relationship of trust with those in government and specifically in law enforcement. And so I'm excited to see the progress that can be made through strengthening that relationship with the community. And maybe there will be an increased willingness of folks who have information to come forward and share that, because that's a risk. And it requires trust for people to come forward in some of those situations. So I'm really encouraged and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Thank you, Jay.
Randall, what Mr. Rhodey has said reminds me of a scenario from years ago. I responded as assistant chief at Charleston. I responded to a shooting where there had been several people shot, and I was pretty close to the call when it went out, and so I got there relatively quickly, and I saw the first officer on the scene. One of the first things that he was doing was running off everybody, running off the witnesses. Get out of here, clear the area, go home. There's nothing to see here. Well, he's running off his witnesses.
Yes.
That's what he's doing. Yeah. And so you gotta understand as a police officer, those are valuable to you, to your investigation. You gotta collect those people and you gotta nurture those people. And you gotta interview those people quickly, find out who these people are, get names and addresses. And that aids greatly in the prosecution. Jack can probably tell you a number of cases that witnesses came up later because they weren't asked questions initially by officers on the scene. And a DA investigator or a detective from the police department identified these people in the course of their investigation. Could have been identified much earlier.
There's a RAND study many years ago that found out that the most important factor, and you probably remember this, in solving crimes was the preliminary investigation by the first officer on the scene. Witnesses solve probably 99% of homicides and major crimes. It's like you said, don't chase them away. And that's come through training. Thank you, Charles. Paige Michelle, the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce. You want to add anything?
Well, I'm no expert on crime,
I know.
but I deal with the businesses. I'm here listening. I'm here listening and learning. But I'm here, to talk about businesses and the business interests. And I know that we all want Lamarque to grow with economic development.
Right.
And if businesses, if there's a lot of crime and they don't have confidence that they can operate safely, if they don't have a big, capital investment in the site, they can do business elsewhere, they will do business elsewhere. So we definitely want to focus on, everything you're talking about to reduce the crime rate for the businesses. And I also think sometimes businesses are responsible for, their property and keeping it up. So especially some small businesses. And I think that, businesses that aren't looking too great can contribute. I think that that's a factor. So we also want to hold our businesses accountable to keeping their properties looking good and not being,
Thank you for your time today too. I know you got to
Yes.
leave. You got to leave in a minute. Okay.
I've already missed it.
All right. Well, the second meeting will be set for the week of November 22nd. I'd really like you back. You can come back. We've come a long way with this. So everybody here, Dr. Taylor, by the way, he's running for sheriff of Durham County, North Carolina, right? I think you're going to win too. But anyway,
Wake County.
I'm sorry, Wake County. Wake County. Okay, with that, anybody want to add anything else before we close?
Chief Aragon, I have.
Yeah, let's open this up to council for questions.
I do have some follow-up. First,
the idea of the phones, I guess we're presently not doing that, right? Chief Wagner, there's a city phone assigned to our officers, or are they using their personal phones?
Depends on the position. Most officers do not, but the executives have a city phone.
Okay,
So-
well, my only comment is that when and if this extends to the District B area, that I will utilize some of my own District B funding to purchase the phone or to acquire it or pay for the services associated with those officers that you assign to the District B community policing area. Okay, and that number one. And I also want to know what other resources are lacking if you identify that. I want to follow up on something Paige mentioned, and this is something that I also discuss and study in a group that I'm called, community group that's called Stronger Communities. It's this, you mentioned, and I think I forgot the term, but the businesses that are coming into your community, right? And I'd like council and all of us to focus on that as well as part of these discussions, because there's a tendency, I even at one point in this community where we had a bunch of, and Chief Wiley, you may remember this, in Galveston, even a lot of these game rooms that were popping up all over. We have those here in Marque. We have game rooms. We have, and I don't know how many, the numbers and things of that nature. We also have almost, it seems to me, these little convenience stores that are popping up at like almost block from one block to another block. I just noticed that one on Cedar, and I don't quite understand that process. We should, as part of a proper community growth, also have some ideas of what's appropriate in terms of our city blocks and our communities. And I think that speaks to your point about overwhelming our communities with maybe the wrong types of businesses as well too. Is that?
Well,
that's
that's a part of economic development,
Yeah.
and I think you should definitely include your economic development team. I think that you need to have really clear parameters on, size of businesses per a lot and, zoning. I'm not that intimately familiar with all the
Yeah.
zoning regulations,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely not for, categorizing whole businesses and not allowing them in a city. I think that's tough. You're going to have some good parameters, but if there's research about a certain type and it having crime, it's definitely something to look at.
Do those stores have gaming machines?
Yes, I think.
That's why they're opening up. That's
gaming
exactly what.
machines? Yeah.
Look at, I think Jack, maybe you could chime in on this, but if you look at the city of Hitchcock's parameters they put on those particular types of businesses, I want to say they have some of the toughest restrictions on those particular types of businesses with increased cost per machine. And I know that because my dad was the one who put that in place when he was the mayor of Hitchcock. So, if you look at Hitchcock, it still didn't keep some of those businesses out because they just continue to pay X amount of dollars because they're making X amount of dollars. But I think that's, like you said, it's going to be based upon parameters you put on there.
Yeah, you may only allow so many per square mile or a distance between them. There's ways.
Yeah, that'll be a council.
Yeah.
And the last thing, and once again, the wonderful brain power that's here and you as resources, I would like to touch upon what we as a community can do for those that are least among us, right? And that we all know is a factor in crime. It can be, and maybe we're missing some other people here at the table. Chief, maybe we need to get the United Way rep in as well too, or Catholic Chair. I've been serving some of these on the board already, but I think there's that part of the community policing. Now let's have organizations that are involved with you as part of this. If we're going to empower our policemen to solve something, maybe at that initial front end call, let's get you, because you're having an inability to pay rent, let's make sure you're directed to, to a resource that can provide you some assistance there and bring that stress level down.
I have a question for you, Chief.
Yeah, I had some social workers, scheduled experts, subject matter experts, mental. They couldn't make it this time.
Yes.
Councilwoman Yancey and the mayor have given me some names. They couldn't make it. But you're right. That's social work,
That was, I think that was Casey, Chief. I think Casey gave you those names. Casey.
Go ahead.
Do we know, based on statistics, what's our target age group of those that commit the most violent crime? Is it between the ages of 16 and 24?
I can get that.
Okay. Because I agree with Councilman Comey on it. The community policing aspect is great. There's got to be an integration of resources for the community, right? So if we're seeing that, our greatest population of those who commit violent crimes is the ages of 16 to 24, which being the former executive director of security, a lot of those are going to be some of our kids, right? And so we've had this conversation over the last several years as why some of our kids are having this increased violent behavior. And I attribute it, having been in the schools, Jancy can attest to this, is that we have no resources here. We have no resources for them to do things, right? And so I just had a conversation last week with our principal at the alternative school, Don Jones, about integrating in, and some people may not like this idea, but I like it, is a boxing program for TCISD to get some of these kids involved, right? What's boxing do? It helps establish self-control, right? Some of these kids have never been taught self-control because they don't have that at home, right? It establishes self-control, it establishes discipline, it sets parameters on them for what they can and can't do if they want to be a part of this program. It teaches them how to be a good member of society. It teaches them respect. And so that's something that I'm focusing on right now with TCISD and Don Jones, is developing this program, not only for TCISD, but we want to eventually have this program develop into a countywide program. But same thing, is where do we get the resources? Where do we get the funding? And so that's incumbent upon me to find. But when I grew up here, we had, Little League was big. It was huge. Right. And I've said this multiple times before. We talk about socioeconomics and why we don't see that in the city of Lamarque. Well, it's because we're competing with, everybody wants their kid to be a select baseball player or a travel baseball player. So they're paying these, high fees, right? And so therefore Little League is now gone because everybody's paying for these, private lessons and whatnot, thinking their kid's going to be the next MLB. Well, what about these kids that can't afford that? What are we doing as a community, whether it be Texas City, Lamarque, and Galveston County? What are we doing for those children that are in a lower socioeconomic status? Where are those organizations that we used to have that filled that gap, right? And so I think that this is a combination of a lot of things between the socioeconomic status, the involvement of the community, and the community policing guidelines and vision that you have. This has all got to be brought together. Right. So, I just wanted to.
Don't forget, and I think Paige joined. You sit with me on our foundation, right?
No, that's Jenny.
I forget. But please remember, the foundation is a resource for some of those funding, right? Lots of it. Right. So if we can bring in your principal and stuff, we just need people to, and now's the time to submit those grants and opportunities.
I plan on hitting up Jenny White.
Yeah. Well, I'll support you there. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
I just would like to say something too. I know Mike and I have had long conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Jack and I have had long conversations over the years about the trauma of Mid-County, about the dump of people that were sent between 2004 and 2012 from Galveston without any type of resources. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in Lamar is a manifestation of that migration. And as a pastor's wife, I think I represent a lot of different platforms: pastor's wife, educator, community leader, now councilwoman. And we talk a lot, but we never put in the structure. Jack, you and I have talked about, we do a lot of talking, but there's no one there to really put in some structure in place. My district has the most crime. That's why I asked the chief, because numbers don't lie, right? Nobody can argue that the numbers are horrible. But we haven't talked about the unemployment numbers, which is also extraordinarily high. Aaron Demerson, who sits on the Texas TWC and is a personal friend of mine, is out of 3 commissioners, has basically said that we have not utilized the services that we can with TWC because unemployment is a big issue in this area. And it seems we have so many people that don't live in Lamar, but they play in Lamar or they work in Lamar and they don't really know Lamar. And so a lot of the integration, that's why I'm glad Mike is back home, because he can kind of bring people together to set up that structure, because we're all talking about the same thing: education. We know we've got new schools, that's going to turn around in a matter of time. We're living in the first unchurched generation in America. So now the cops are everything to these kids because they're not coming to church. Numbers in Black and white churches have fallen dramatically to the point that I left my job to work for a church app because churches are losing so many members. They're trying to do whatever we have to do to get people back in because we see the issues. Because there used to be a time you could go to the churches and get the help for self-control. So that's one issue. Because when you talk about going to preachers and churches, some of them have less than 100 people showing up. That was prior to COVID. Now that's even worse, right? So you have this issue where people don't respect the boys out there not going to church. So the policeman becomes everything, right? But then you have these nonprofits that are coming up left and right in the Marque, Texas City, but they don't know how to get in. So when you talk about select ball, let's say this, because you're on the board for Texas City ISD. We can't even utilize their gyms on this side of town. They won't let private teams use gyms. They won't let us use the tracks that we used to be able to, and back in the day, everybody used to use the tracks. They stopped all of that once Marque ISD merged with Texas City. So some of those fundamental programs can't happen because the structure has been displaced. So we've got to get, number one, the structure back in. Number two, community policing has to involve everybody. I am a big fan of it, especially in this day and time. Chief, I've already seen your progress. I've already seen the cops get out of their car and talk to people in patrol. Just in the last 2 weeks, I am amazed at what your presence has done. Because I live in a big city. I didn't see all that, but my church was here and I work down here. So I have seen the difference. I'm glad Jack is here because, like I said, we have talked about what do we do? Because for a lot of these kids, it's not about race, it's about poverty. That's really it. It's poverty, not knowing where to go. Parents are working, they're not unemployed. Some of them, they're underemployed, right? And so you have that thing. So I'm hoping, and Mike, you have a great brain. I respect you a lot, and you're from here. And that people still say you're from Cleveland. I get it. But you bring such a unique space to this area because they respect you and they respect what you have to say. So I do hope with your security background, now that you understand it has to be a background of nurturing. Sure. You can't just hit and expect a great person to come and you hitting me all day. It's got to be about education. It's got to be about jobs. A lot of these kids can't get hired. People won't hire people from Lamar just because what Joe said, customer service. But again, we haven't dealt with the trauma. We got UTMB right up the road, and they have totally forgotten about that group of people, 2,500 people that we moved to the island. We didn't give them resources. We gave them no type of counseling help. We just dumped them and said, we'll bring you back in 3 years. And 3 years has turned into 15. So until someone really deals with the trauma and we really delegate, this group will deal with that. Paige and TWC and Aaron Dickinson, we'll work with Aaron Dickinson and HGAC, and we'll concentrate on the jobs. I'm going to work on the safety, and we're going to work with the chief to really deal with sex. So the problem, this is not a hat trick. But when you were saying, Victor, about the lights, well, in my district, it is dark, and that's where crime happens, where it's dark. But we still got to deal with some of the elements that we have in the Marque PD. We do, and you're right. When you don't give a cop nice places to work, which our place is horrible. If you don't provide the adequate resources, then you get what you pay for. You get piss poor cops. And some of that is what we've seen, not all of them, but it's too many, right? So I believe that if we give them the tools they need to be successful, we will do a better job. And then our kids won't get shot in the back. I mean, but we can do it because we're intelligent. We have everything we need, but we just gotta stop talking about it. And I'm gonna say this, it's too many of us that say we don't like each other, but it's not about us liking each other. We have been blessed to do a job. We have been ordained to hold a position of influence and power, and we need to do that. I don't give a fat rat if you don't like me. I wanna make sure that we do the job for these babies. These kids, we are the adults now.
Yeah, and I'll just to add on to that, and I apologize if I'm talking too much, but I do feel like Ms. Yancey's 100% accurate. When I came to Texas City after traveling the world and seeing different things, a lot of kids here never get to see. That's my message to a lot of these kids is that don't let this area or your mentality define you. You are capable of going to do greater things, right? But when I came back, and started with the school districts, I had a very different perspective of what we needed. We had a job to do. We were three weeks after Santa Fe, right? And so, like you said, we hit the school. Hey, even because we were hitting hard, and then I quickly realized that these people, they don't necessarily need someone to come in and hit them over the head. They don't need that blunt object. They need that razor to try to refine and give them the resources that they need. Sometimes, like you said, there's so much trauma here. And it took me about a year to realize that these are just hurting people. These are hurting kids. They don't have any resources. They don't have anywhere to turn to. We are living in a society that is fast paced, that is emerging so fast that we can't keep up, right? And so it's our job to understand that human behavior and that human element piece. Technology is great, lights, cameras, license plate readers, all these things that can be a supplement to the human element and human factor. That's got to be the core. Once we reach out to the community and make them realize that we're here to help, all the other things are additional, right? They're just add-ons. So it's that holistic, proactive rather than reactive approach. So I agree. We've got to address the trauma here. We have to have organizations. We have to have, mentor programs, things like that are going to touch people's heart to not want to hurt each other or themselves.
Mike, well said. Councilwoman McCall, she had mentioned that what's the definition of community policing. So I just want to be ended by saying before we close.
Yeah, we have a couple more questions, Chief, before you do that. Casey, I know you're on a time schedule. Did you want to jump in really quickly?
I do, and I thank you for that. So one of the things I'm going to say has really been touched on quite a bit. I just want to be specific about something I'm looking for out of all of this work we do. And that is, Chief Aragon, I was delighted to see your outline for what you envision these, sessions all being. I am a big fan of creating a plan, identifying objectives, so that then you can look back and you can measure how far you've come and what you need to do. One of the things I think is still not clear for us as a city is what are the actual goals and the specific objectives of this Safe City initiative. Now, I know that that's part of what this process will get us to. From what I understood in your agenda that you wrote out, that's what we will be crystallizing in session 3, right? Phase 3. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
Awesome. But if we were supposed to have a big overarching goal already now, I don't know what it is. If someone asked me, I would say something like, well, we're trying to be a safe city. And still that doesn't mean anything to me. That means zilch, I mean, so what I'm really looking for is that we come up with explicit goals within these different areas that I think they've all been mentioned today. It's community policing and what kind of policies and actual activities does that translate to? It's the different neighborhood teams and certain kinds of metrics that will be hit by different police officers. It's increasing workforce and speaking with economic development. We can come up with very specific objectives there over a timeline. It's working with the school districts, and it's providing more opportunities for our youth, like Mr. Matranga said, and environmental factors, which are the lighting, right? Which are better potholes, which are connections to social resources. These are all things that can be discrete, and we can break them down into measurable goals. And I'm really looking forward to that. And I'll say again, I was delighted to see in your write-out, Chief Aragon, that we could create a list that would be never ending, but we have to create a short, discrete list for these different categories of things, make a timeline, and start working, start making stuff happen, because we have a written out goal that's not just, well, we really should have things to do for kids. Okay, what does that mean? That means we create a task force who is going to work on bringing a baseball team, or a nonprofit that comes in. We're going to get a Boys and Girls Club in Lamarque, or whatever it is. I'm delighted, and I'm really looking forward to all of that happening. The second thing I asked for in time for the next session is the presence of UTMB's Center for Violence Prevention. They were at our first workshop, and they were one of the institutions that very clearly has the assets and the resources to help our school districts implement anti-violence curriculum and access a lot of funding to make things happen. In those conversations that we had back in February, Mayor, I don't remember.
Yes, ma'am.
They referred to working with school districts and children as low-hanging fruit when it comes to reducing violence. And I think that's totally echoed in everything that Mr. Matranga said, right? These generations build. So I want to see them in our next session. And I'd also like to see someone from the school district, at least Texas City ISD, if not all of them. I think we should invite all of them, because the schools have to be a part of this conversation, at least some element. And then finally, we asked the 409 Collective to come to our initial workshops. I don't know if they should be at the future, but we need more representatives from our area, particularly people of color, to sit on these panels and to talk and be a part of these conversations beyond, I think, just my fellow esteemed council people. I think it's incredibly important. You yourself brought forth those demographics, and we just can't have an imbalanced table of people weighing in when it comes to representing and making decisions on behalf of the city. So hooray, thank you. And again, thank you for that agenda. I love it.
Michael, you had anything?
The only thing I have to say is I appreciate the hard approach you take with the criminals. It needs to be done. Chief, thank you for having this. Mr. Matranga, thank you for your support. So, Chief, thank you. I agree that with Ms. Yancey and with the commerce it works hand in hand. You gotta take care of violence to get the businesses in. So it's kind of a hand in hand approach. And I have been working with I forgot her last name, about getting a softball team over here. That way it gives
Ms. Davia.
Yeah.
Ms. Davia. Mhm.
And I've been working with her on trying to, hopefully I can get her to the council meeting next month. But I've been trying to work on that, trying to get the sports program. I talked about it during the budget workshops. I'd love to get the youth involved. So that way it keeps them out of trouble. So, and they're not spending $400 for select ball. So,
yeah.
But I appreciate everyone for coming here today. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Thanks.
Again, thank you, Chief Argon, for finally putting this together for us. We've been trying to do this since since February. And so we thank you for putting this first discussion forward. Again, you know, in 1964, Ronald Reagan, Mike, in one of the greatest speeches in our history, he declared that then was a time of choosing. And I believe that we're at that juncture here in Lamar. It's a time of choosing. Who do we want to be? What sort of city do we want to be? Do we want to be a safe city? Well, that's going to take sacrifice, shared sacrifice. If we don't want to be a safe city, then we no longer have the opportunity or any reason to complain about the crime that we have in our community. A couple things, and then I'll give it back to Chief Argon. Mr. Taylor, you were asking what types of crimes do our citizens have issues with? Well, over the first 6 months of this year, we were inundated on social media with these reports of gunfire. And so almost every other post, somebody in our community was saying, oh, there are folks shooting in my area, right? And so that was a problem in the first part of our year. Somehow that's no longer a problem, although people still report gunshots. Shootings was another issue in our community. In fact, to Mr. Matranga's point, one of the exchanges that we all had on council was after one of our most recent shootings. And so gunfire is a problem, shootings are a problem, and property crimes would be the third problem. As we visit with people in meetings and as we are able to look at what their complaints are, it's property crimes, people smashing and grabbing, busting people's car windows, taking things out of their car, things of that nature. Those are the three most prevalent crimes that we have had reported in our community. Those are three issues that more policing, better policing, and more resources can address on a fundamental level. And again, it's going to take resources. Either we want a city without gunfire, without shooting victims, and without property crimes, or we want more of that. That's a very simple proposition. That's all that is, Chief. We either want more or we want less. If we want less, then we have to do more. If we're not willing to do more, then we will realize less safety and security. One of the other things, Mr. Rhodey, good to see you. I have several things I want to talk to you about after this meeting. One of the other issues that we're having in this little city, and it's not our police officers' fault in any stretch of the imagination, Paige, but here's what it is. Right now, today, we have 300 plus unsolved felonies in our city. Right now, Mike, 300 plus unsolved felonies in our city. You know why we can't solve them? We can't solve them because before our detectives get a chance to wrap their head around what actually has happened, there's another crime. You get what I'm saying? Do you know we only have a few detectives, and here's what's happening. When they get a chance to start to investigate a crime, and heaven forbid that crime is murder, by the time they actually get immersed in that investigation, another murder happens. And then they have to move to the newest murder. And so my mind says, how do you solve that? You solve that by providing more resources so that they can handle the caseloads that they have. You know about that, don't you, Mr. Rhodey? I would hope that you have more than enough assistant DAs to resolve the issues.
We're swimming in DAs.
You're swimming in DAs.
No, we have the same issue. We go to commissioner's court when we have the need, and we ask them to allocate some of those funds to address that need.
Right. So our issue here is predominantly the lack of resources. When you have prevalent crime, and then you have those crimes that are committed not being resolved, That is fundamentally, I'm not a police officer, but I'm in front of a bunch of them. That's fundamentally clear cut a lack of resources. Chief, is it not?
So December 2019, I testified before the state Senate with the director of Department of Public Safety, Tom Munoz, who's our former emergency manager in the city of Texas City, and a couple other high-ranking officials throughout the state. And the premise of that testimony was to basically request from the Senate panel that we have our own regional intelligence center here in Galveston County. And I'm not sure if you remember that testimony or not, but I had been asked by Senator Taylor to be there to articulate the need, right? And we talk about resources. December 2019, myself and the director of the Department of Public Safety, who manages these regional intelligence centers, both told the Senate that we need our own intelligence center here in Galveston County for multiple reasons. One, because we have some smaller communities like ours here that don't have the resources.
Mhm.
What that regional intelligence center would do would serve as a force multiplier for your entire county, because you would essentially take all of the county law enforcement agencies, put them together, and they would collaborate and help address this 300 felonies that haven't been solved within the city of Lamar. But even beyond that, we have a regional intelligence center. It's in Houston, on the north side of Houston. And my articulation to the Senate panel was that we're good at sending intelligence up, but it's not good at coming down. And there's a lot of mileage from where that regional intelligence center sits in Houston to the Galveston Bay. And so when we initially talked to our senators about this regional intelligence center and the need for that and collaboration with law enforcement to assist as a force multiplier for the entire county, we were told that Galveston County itself wasn't large enough. And so my proposal to our senator and to the board was that we combine the 5 coastal counties, which would be Matagorda, Brazoria, Galveston, Chambers, and Jefferson. Well, why those? Well, because we have some of the softest targets in the state of Texas along the Texas Gulf Coast, with the nuclear power plant in Matagorda, the refineries in Brazoria, the 19 refineries we have here, and then the refineries we have in Jefferson County, to include the Port of Texas City, the Port of Galveston. Those are all soft targets in my book. They agreed that we needed that, right? The other thing that I propose that is beyond just being soft targets is the force multiplier to cities like Lamarque, Hitchcock, Santa Fe, in regards to day-to-day activity in crime. But even beyond that, we talk about we don't have enough resources to investigate every threat within a school, right? And I know that there are some schools that they like to do their own thing. But when I was in Las Vegas working with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, the FBI, and assigned to the regional intelligence center specializing in domestic terrorism, that program that they had there that addressed school shootings and felonious criminal activity was a well-oiled machine. I would like to see some push from our communities here, Lamarque, our district attorney's office, to the state to articulate the need for that. It's a force multiplier for everyone. It would help take some of those 300 unsolved felonies off of your books. It's basically a task force. Why we don't have that really in Galveston County anymore, I don't know. But I think that that's something that should be explored.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about 300 felonies that haven't been addressed, I think that there are means to get that done. We've got to stop thinking of, how we did law enforcement 10, 15, 20 years ago. We are moving, like I said, fast-paced society, fast-paced thinking. Our kids are now doing and seeing things that we never saw as kids. Our parents are further along and more advanced. And we as municipalities and as law enforcement are lagging. So we've got to be pushing that. It's got to be from our level. I don't really have much influence anymore, but, that would be something that I would encourage you, Jack, please, Mayor, to do, sir.
In the early 70s, the sheriff's office in Galveston County established what they call the crime squad. Some may remember that. It was a regional organized crime control unit. It was funded by a grant largely. Those grant funds dissipated over time, and the crime squad became less of what it was initially because of that. But it was made up of representatives from every law enforcement agency in the county, including Lamarque. Lamarque had a representative in the police department that was full-time assigned to that crime squad. And it was led by sheriff department senior personnel. And they addressed crimes in all the cities of Lamarque. They had a mutual aid agreement that gave them jurisdiction across all those regional jurisdictions, across all the city limits. And they investigated a lot of criminal activity, and especially narcotics. And so that's doable. It can still be done. I don't know what exists in the sheriff's office now, but that's something that could be explored. It was successful back then.
Chad, you heard the chief.
Yeah.
We have one now, don't we?
Correct. We do. We have, it's just been started up in the last few months. We are participating in it. That was something, and then in the same type of way, the sheriff's department runs it. We have representatives from most agencies. We have someone over there now. We just had to remove them. They were in another assignment, so we had to remove them and put them over there. But yes, it's the same type of task force focused on these type of violent crimes and things like that.
It started up again.
Good.
Mayor, may I say something?
Go ahead.
Councilwoman McCullough mentioned about community policing definition. As part of this community policing effort, I'm going to be selecting members for what I call a community-oriented policing leadership council. It's a group. It's called the Big Six: business, community, elected officials, citizens, other agencies, the media, and the police. The Big Six. So, knowing our council and you, Mayor, you all probably want to be on that. I usually pick two because if I have three, Robin, it becomes a quorum, right? So if we have that with everybody showing up, I don't think any other council wants to miss that. We just call it a meeting.
Notice a possible quorum. Yeah, you just have to notify the public that 3 of us will be in the same room at.
So I think you'd all want to be there, but the vision is, when I had it before, I only had 2 on there. One, the mayor and 1 councilman. We need to have that, and I'll be actually showing you what community police is all about. I have PowerPoints, so you know what it is, and you're going to point the direction for us. I want that, so that when the Big Six meets, the leadership council, I envision maybe 12 people, 13 people on it, and we'll meet about quarterly. But I'll be doing that probably in the next 2 months. And that'll happen even before we kick off Lake Road, Lake Road North. So just look at that coming, Councilman McCullough. You'll see a full presentation on what community policing is all about, and you'll have the basics. Okay,
that works.
Mayor, I think we've covered a whole lot of it. If you want to
think, I think, again, thank you guys all for coming. This is the first step in our Safe City initiative. We'll move forward with this same group. We'll add more, but everybody has contributed. We thank each and every one of you for coming. And when's our next meeting, Chief? When's our next meeting?
Next meeting will be the week of, I think it's November 20th. The week of November 22nd.
The week of November 22nd. That works.
Phase 2.
Is that Thanksgiving? Is that Thanksgiving week?
I think, I don't believe it is.
Yes.
Not that day. That week.
The 25th is Thanksgiving.
Okay, it's gonna be.
So maybe the week before, Chief?
Sir?
Maybe the week before?
We can.
Okay. All right. Middle of November, right?
That'll be right.
That works. Thank you all for coming. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. There's a second? All in favor? We stand adjourned.